we will have the third iteration of the Armchair Airshow, raising funds for an amazing charity. And why we're doing it, we enjoyed lockdown so much, we decided to do it all over again and bring you amazing content, unseen footage. But the charity lies at the heart of this day today. John.
Thank you, George. Yes, well, I've been associated with the charity for 15 years. I'm a trustee, and it's wonderful to see our hosts, the Biggin Hill Heritage here, looking after us today and bringing you 3 hours of incredible aviation action. Lingy.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. We've got exclusive access to a lot of display pilots and aircraft, including the Blades, the Starlings, and these wonderful vintage Warbirds here at the Heritage Hang at Biggin Hill.
And it wouldn't be the same without making up our team, the Chinook chick, the incredible Liz McConaughey. Liz, what's on the line for you?
Well, later on I'll be chatting to two very young world record break holders, and we'll also be taking you all the way from Biggin Hill up to Bonnie, Scotland.
But it wouldn't be the same. This just wouldn't happen without, first of all, your support towards this charity, but also our many, many sponsors as well. Aerobites and so many others, Nats. Of course, we've mentioned the hangar here, the entire staff at Biggin Hill Airport, and the whole airspace. We've got an awful lot coming your way. Stand by, a roller coaster road. But to introduce our first act this afternoon, we're going live with the Starlings. Over to John and Lingy.
Thanks very much indeed, George. Well, so we're at the historic Biggin Hill, and in fact, this is where UK air shows really began. In the 1920s, we had the Empire Air Days, and then we had the Battle of Britain at Home Days, followed by, for many years, the Biggin Hill Air Fair, indeed, for over 40 years. And then we had the Biggin Hill management to take over from the air fair, producing incredible air shows for a number of years after that. But what we're going to be doing now is looking at a two-ship formation aerobatic display team. They're new on the circuit. They've been around for a few months, and they are comprised of an extra NG and a cap 232. Now, Lingy knows all about going upside down, don't you?
I have to say, I haven't seen this display team yet. They are a fledgling display team formed last year with Tom Cassells and Michael Pickin. And I've been told they are in the air and they should be arriving very shortly. The Extra NG, the new generation of the Extra, the same aircraft I'm lucky enough to fly with the Blades, but this is the new generation of the Extra 300. And a Cap 232 flown by Michael. And they're coming in to give us some synchronized aerobatics. And then these both UK Championship aerobatic pilots will be giving us their own individual performances, showing what these aircraft are capable of.
Now, if you look to the right, Lingy, I can see them coming over our right shoulder. They are in echelon right, it would seem, coming over Cudham Village at about 200 feet, and they're going to start their formation aerobatic routine.
So looks like Tom is at the front leading in the Extra, pulling up into a nice loop with the smoke on in echelon. Probably around about a 4G pull-up for that loop.
Now, Tom's doing all the hard work. He's leading, and Mike is hanging on to his right wingtip. Mike is doing nothing but taking sole reference for his flight off of Tom's wing. And it's Tom's responsibility for positioning, both height and also distance. We'll talk about air shows and the rules that govern air shows a bit later on in the show today. But they are restricted in what they can and they cannot do. But they're doing an incredible job here. There's a bit of an on-crowd wind as well. That affects their decision-making and positioning as they fly these manoeuvres. Into a wing over left, coming back down.
Again, he's just keeping a lot of G on in this formation. So Tom's just positioning the aircraft, keeping it loaded. So Michael working hard to line up the references as we were talking about, using his hands and feet just to keep the aeroplane in the right place, lining up different parts of Tom's aeroplane. Into line astern now as they're finishing this little wing over with a, it looks like a bit of a half Cuban.
And Mike in the number 2 position is a local lad. He was an air cadet at 2427 Biggin Hill Squadron. And he became the country's youngest display pilot. At 17 years old, he displays his father's Youngman at the Headcorn Air Show many years ago and hasn't looked back. Indeed, he's followed in his father's footsteps, becoming the UK Advanced Unlimited Aerobatic Champion. So an incredible feat for somebody of such a young age. Michael is now 30 years old, and aerobatics are not enough for him. He's now stepped into Warbirds and flies a Spitfire, being the UK's youngest Spitfire pilot.
He's also a 757 pilot working for a commercial airline.
Yeah,
so another
absolutely.
loop back into echelon coming from line astern. You might have noticed the intermittent smoke there. That's, I think, a digitally controlled smoke system, which was just pulsating on that cap as they were performing the line astern elements. Again, Tom's keeping this nice and loaded as he just keeps it pulled up into the loop. We're a bit restricted by airspace here above Biggin Hill. Biggin Hill sits around 600 feet above sea level, and then we've only got around 1,900 feet of airspace to play with to perform these aerobatics. So nice tight loops to keep the aircraft below the London airspace.
Now, shortly they're going to break off and they're going to do some solo aerobatics for you. But a little bit about Tom, who's leading the team, as I said earlier on. He got his PPL in 1983 and since then has flown some 40 types of aircraft, accumulating up to 7,000 hours. Some of this was spent as a parachute drop pilot, a really good way to build up your flying hours. And he's been the unlimited National Aerobatic Champion 3 times and is also a display authorization examiner. And I think you know him pretty well, don't you, Lee?
In fact, he renewed my display authorization last year. So I was one of his first candidates, in fact, his first candidate to renew my display authorization. So a great example to follow with Tom. He's a very gifted pilot and he's got some very good advice for us pilots flying similar aircraft.
Well, being evaluated for the first time, Lingy, is indeed quite nervy because I was your first victim when you became a DAE last year.
You did very well, John. Right, they're coming in from the Biggin Hill Valley side now, so entering runway 03 threshold, flying in from our left to right as we look at it. And I think they're going to be splitting into some individual manoeuvres soon.
Now, as you see Michael there on the right-hand side, echelon right, he's adopting power and something we call lead and lag. He's doing all he can to stay in position and using typically 3 references to make sure that he can triangulate his position and stay accurate for us. If you were in his cockpit, you would see all the minor changes he's making, just small inputs. These aircraft are very sensitive on the controls, and so as we see it, it's a bit of a gusty day. I say that Michael's doing a pretty good job there, wouldn't you say?
He's doing a very good job, and because Tom is constantly loading during these manoeuvres, it's making it harder for Michael to stay in formation, but he's doing a fantastic job. Here we go, splitting up now. You've got Tom and his extra pulling up into his own tight loop with a little twinkle at the top. Then here comes Michael following behind in the cab and into a snap roll. So snap roll coming down on the 45 line, down to what looks like around 100 feet.
Now, you may wonder, how on earth do they remember to do all this sort of thing? Well, they have to commit this routine to memory. What you'll often see at air displays is the pilots walking the display, as we say, and that is to actually physically walk the display that you're about to fly, so it's committed to your memory. Now, the way that we catalogue what we're going to fly is effectively an aerobatic language. These aerobatic manoeuvres have been going on for, of course, many years since the First World War, since the age of dogfighting. But how do we note down and remember what it is we're going to fly? Well, we have something called the Aresti catalogue, which was designed by a Spanish aviator, Colonel José Luis Aresti Aguirre. And whilst he was a trainee pilot in Jerez in Spain, was able to invent a language to allow us as display pilots and aerobatic competition pilots to note down the routines we'll be flying. Manoeuvres are grouped into 8 families depicting basic figures such as turns, loops, vertical lines, and the family is also looking at what you introduce into those basic figures, whether that be tumbles and rolls, etc. So, you know, very complex manoeuvre here that Michael is flying now. Look at that knife edge, a big boot of right
Lovely
rudder.
Knife edge slide, yeah. He's got a powerful engine in the aeroplane and a huge rudder, which enables him to put a lot of rudder in to keep the aircraft flying in that direction, which is obviously not normal for certainly these other light aircraft we're looking at.
Now, just like Michael, many display pilots started life flying competitions because this is where you can really hone your accuracy and safety in terms of air display flying. There's various levels of competition aerobatics. It starts with club and sport level, which is typically your basic level of aerobatics, and then it moves forwards in complexity to intermediate, advanced and unlimited. And both Tom and Michael are showing you here unlimited aerobatics.
Yeah, speak of the devil. Here comes Tom in now from the right with his smoke on in his Extra. This is a new aircraft, whole new aircraft, the Extra NG. 300 horsepower and a Lycoming engine up front. and a huge rudder, huge control surfaces for him to do some of these fabulous manoeuvres. So he's pitching up vertical, a roll right, a roll left, and I think he's just flicking over the top, coming back down vertically downwards now with a roll through 540 degrees, back out in the opposite direction. We're coming out to about 100 feet, lots of G at the bottom there. You saw how tight that turn was at the bottom. This aircraft is actually stressed to plus 10 G, so it can pull 10 times the force of gravity. More alarmingly, perhaps, it can actually push minus 10 G, which I've not been below minus 5 G, and even that was uncomfortable. So goodness knows what minus 10 G feels like. So at the top of the loop now, he's just gone into another snap.
And the snap roll is a really interesting manoeuvre. Effectively what you're doing is you're stalling one of the wings and then putting in a whole load of rudder, and the aircraft just rotates around the wing that's still flying. Incredible manoeuvre and quite uncomfortable.
Quite restricted by both the airspace and the layout here at Biggin Hill, with the domestic site on the western side of the airfield. So they're performing very tight manoeuvres in the boundary of the airfield almost, and of course, as I said already, capped by the airspace of London above us. So speeding up now as he gets to the bottom, a very tight pull up to the vertical, a roll right.
Now what Tom is going to be doing here, he's always going to be looking outside, getting his positioning. He's going to be judging the effect of wind, and he's going to be making sure that he's adhering to the limits imposed upon him in terms of height and positioning from the crowd. So very much looking outside and really relying on his muscle memory. And Lingy, with the blades that you fly with, I'm sure plenty of that is very much reliant on your experience and the fact that you're doing this all the time, and you can judge the feel of the aircraft as you fly it.
Watching competition pilots like Tom and Michael, and also Gerald Cooper, who is a 9-time UK champion, they fly them so crisply, and they are so controlled in what they do. I think that is Tom now disappearing off to the north as they finish their display. And what a fantastic thing that was. It was brilliant to watch. First time I've seen the Starlings, and I have to say I'm very, very impressed. I look forward to seeing them throughout the rest of the 2022 summer display season.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Couldn't agree with you more, Lingy. Okay, well, we are here to raise money for a wonderful charity, Aerobility. Now, take a look at this film and you can see where your money's going.
Welcome to Aerobility. For nearly 30 years, we've been providing access to the magic and wonder of flight to anyone with any disability. Up to 1,000 individuals take to the skies with us every year, 30% of which are wounded, injured or sick, armed forces veterans. We don't just teach people to fly, we change people's perspective on the world and their capabilities forever.
You know, the one thing that's fantastic about Aerobility is the way that there is no difference between people who are disabled and those that are non-disabled.
They gave me that purpose back, they gave me that sense of worth again, and for that I'm forever thankful.
Thanks to the support from the Department for Transport, Aerobites and all our supporters, 100% of every pound you donate today will go directly toward funding disabled flying. Please visit armchairairshow.com to make your donation. Together with your support, we can make such a difference through the magic of flight. Thank you.
I am happier.
I am more confident.
I am feeling positive about my life.
Thanks to Aerobility.
And thank you to you.
So I'm joined on the sofa now by Kath Fisher, who is a tactical flight officer with the National Police Air Service. Welcome, Kath, and thank you for coming to join us today, all the way from South Wales.
Indeed.
So can you tell our audience a little bit more about MPAS and what they do?
Of course, yes. So I'm a tactical flight officer. I am a police officer for South Wales, seconded to West Yorkshire, who run all the National Police Air Service around the country. And we have 19 helicopters, 4 fixed wing. The helicopters are all around the UK, Wales and England. I work myself out of St Athan. And first and foremost, our primary objective is to support the officers on the ground. We've all been police officers on the ground, and it's typically a very, very difficult job. We know how difficult it is, and we're there to support them.
Oh, wow. And how did you get into the job then?
So I was, as you know, I was in the Air Force back in the day. I was an air traffic controller for 6 years. So I had a sort of aviation head, and I've always loved aviation, and I've held a pilot's licence. After I left the military then, I joined the police, and it was always dead man's shoes, the helicopter jobs. But the vacancy came up when the National Police Air Service started, and I thought, gosh, I'm going to go for that job, and managed to get it. So you have to do a minimum of 2 years on the beat before you can specialise in any of the jobs, any specialist activities. So I did my 2 years, another 4 years on the beat, and then applied for and got into the helicopter job.
Oh, cool. Well, we had the pleasure of talking to some of your colleagues earlier this week, so let's have a look at what we recorded. Today, I'm joined by 3 members of the National Police Air Service. We've got on screen for you today, Dave, Jeff and Alec. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
And each of these individuals all have very different roles within the NPAS service. So if we can just go to you first, Dave, if you want to introduce yourself and just tell the viewers a little bit about what you do for NPAS.
Well, I'm one of the pilots that works for the National Police Air Service, and I'm one of a member of one pilot, one of many who work in the different units. And I work as one of a member of 3 guys who work in the aircraft as the pilot. Predominantly my role is to get in on a morning, service the aircraft. After I've done that, the next thing that I do is I make sure that I brief the guys who I'm actually working with, the tactical flying officer, on what the weather's like, what obstacles are in the air. We call them NOTAMs, notice to airmen. And then after I've done that, what we do is we'll talk about the aircraft, the CFG loading, and how we are going to sit and operate as a member of the team. My job predominantly is to fly the aircraft from one place to another, and I do it in line with the civil aviation rules. But incumbent with that, I also work alongside that team, the guys who are in the back, the tactical flying officers, to make sure that they get what they want, and that is, when we get there, to get the aircraft in the right place at the right time, and to help them do their job, which is coordinating not only me getting the aircraft in the right position with the police on the ground.
Oh, fabulous. So you mentioned tactical flying officers there, and we've actually got one on our screen. So Jeff, over to you. Do you want to just elaborate a little bit more on what your role is?
Yes, no problem at all. So obviously we work alongside Dave, the pilot. So there's normally a crew of 3, 1 pilot, and then 2 tactical flying officers. Within NPAS, there's a mix of police officers who are seconded to NPAS via West Yorkshire Police, or their police staff, tactical flying officers. So we work alongside Dave. So we either operate the camera, sat in the front, and then we assist Dave with pre-takeoff checks, pre-landing checks, and help assist with any emergencies that may happen within the aircraft. And we talk to our control room, which is run by West Yorkshire Police on behalf of all the forces in the UK. Then if you're sat in the back, then you're classed as the mission commander. So you would assist with the navigation of the aircraft to the scene, operate some of the mission equipment, including the Night Sun, which is the big searchlight. We also have a sky shout system, so a big PA system, so we can shout out from the sky to people on the ground. And then it's talking to the officers then, whether it's talking officers in or getting more information about the job we're going to. So it really is a team effort, working with the pilots like Dave, and then with your colleague either sat in front or sat in the back. But it's a good team effort with everyone.
Oh, do you know what? That's really come across actually already, speaking to you guys, is just how much of a team it is just to get yourselves in the air. And probably you've got the most difficult job, I suspect, Alec, out of all of them. So what exactly is your job with NPAS, and do you want to explain it to our viewers?
Yes, hello. So I'm a base manager. So I manage one of these bases. I've got 5 pilots. One of those pilots is a senior pilot. And then I've got 8 tactical flight officers like Jeff that build the aircraft. And should there be any gaps in the crewing, I jump in and cover that gap as well. So I'm trained like Jeff to crew the aircraft. I'm not a pilot though, so not allowed to fly it. So my day to day is managing the base really. Come in. There's normally emails about issues that have happened in the previous 24 hours, and I solve those problems. mainly to do with the building, staffing, maybe even the aircraft. There might be issues with the aircraft. And like already mentioned, there's a big team behind us. So though at the base, there's just me, the pilots and the tactical flight officers, up at our headquarters, we've got people that look after the aircraft maintenance, organise when they'll go in for maintenance, when they'll if they're getting moved around to different places. So although at the base we're quite a small team, we are part of a bigger team that will help us out with any issues we've got.
Absolutely, great stuff. Well, before we came on to the interview, I've had some footage through of some of the stuff that you guys do. And I have to say, I always thought the police just went out and caught baddies, and I had no idea of some of the extra stuff that you guys do to help society, which is why we picked this video to talk about today. So, Jeff, do you just want to explain a little bit about some of the other things that the MPAS do for the British public that they probably don't even know that you guys get on with?
So back in October last year, we were caught at Barry in South Wales for a person in the water. The first thing was obviously to find the person and then decide what we're going to do. And we could see from our position that the lifeboat hadn't deployed yet in the water. So we took a crew decision that we could deploy one of the life rings, which involves opening the door, doing a sort of dynamic risk assessment to see if it's the best course of action that we need to be doing. As a crew of 3, we decided it was the best. So we conducted a low pass over the person, threw one of the life rings out, and fortunately it was in sort of a very close proximity to the person, and the person was able to get into the life ring. And then we were able to talk the lifeboat into him then, and fortunately he was saved. The Coast Guard and the RNLI brought the life rings back to us, and they said if we hadn't done that, the person would have drowned. So it's good team effort, good decision, I think, by all of us, and it was the right thing to do.
Well, that was great meeting some of your team members there, Kath, and you work specifically with Jeff, don't you, that we spoke to on the screen?
I do, yes.
It was really interesting to see what Jeff was talking about there in terms of that mission specifically, doing some life-saving, actually throwing some equipment from the aircraft into the ocean to save that particular chap. But you guys do some other kind of missing persons stuff and suicide attempts and that kind of thing. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
We do. So we're obviously an airborne platform and we're tactical flight officers, as the job suggests. So we can give the control room and the officers that are controlling the incidents the overall picture of what's going on. We direct the resources in, you've seen footage of us following stolen vehicles, that sort of thing, and we can give a commentary as it's going along, so we can talk the right resources into the right area. We also deal a lot with missing persons these days. Over half of our calls now are for vulnerable missing peoples rather than crime. So people that might want to do harm to themselves, unfortunately, or suicidal, or people with dementia. And that's one of the best things that we do, is actually to bring those people back to their families safe and sound. But we have other capabilities as well on the aircraft. As Jeff, my colleague, mentioned, we can throw life jackets out into the water that inflate on contact with the water. We carry a first aid kit with a defibrillator, and the amazing rotary, as you know, we can land pretty much anywhere if it's deemed safe by our pilot. And we can if we're first on the scene, we can go and deliver first aid straight away. We can take the defibrillator to wherever it's needed very, very quickly. And the airborne platform is very important to the officers in the control room. We also have what's called a downlink, a microwave downlink, which provides the picture of the incident as it's ongoing to the senior officers in the control room, so they can have a better perspective of what's going on as well.
Oh, cool. Well, look, I'm sure you've told the audience loads more about what you guys do. And if anyone watching today wants to find out a little bit more about MPAS and what they do, they can go to armchairshow.com, and we've actually got some of the extra footage that we've been showing today on there as well for you to watch. And I just want to say thanks, Kath, for coming down to see us today. And it's also so nice to see some other girls in helicopters making a difference. So well done to you. Over to George.
Thank you, ladies. Really good stuff, and grateful thanks to both Liz and Kath there for bringing us that insight. And talking of inspirational ladies, we're going to be focusing on 2 very young ladies in just a few moments. But a reminder there of what we're doing this for. And of course, you've seen the fundraising film. We have online the most incredible auction going on. You can bid to go flying with a world race air champion, go walking, get a big table at the next Aerobility ball in November, usually the end of November, and even get some aviation themed socks. So get onto that site now and have a go and see if you can outbid your best friends. But moving on to these younger ladies, I'm very fortunate that I live between two of my favourite airfields. One's Middle Wallop, a big grass airfield, in fact the biggest in Europe, and Thruxton. And what do I like about Thruxton is, well, it's got a racetrack with it as well. And a little while ago, I helped to facilitate a really interesting day and an ambition of two young ladies, Leona Theobald and Charlie Cook. Charlie's just 15, Leona's 16. One of them inspired by the aviation through Aerobility, having received a scholarship. The other one got a real passionate desire to be there fast, flat out on the track. And the two of them thought it would be a great idea if they could have a go at each other's sport and passionate activity. Well, we sent Hebe down and a photograph and camera crew team as well, and we got them, two of them together on a day out at Thruxton. Let's take a look.
Aerobility endeavours to make aviation accessible to everyone with a disability. However, as a charity, our focus isn't only on disability barriers, but barriers in totality. This is inclusive of gender barriers.
I'm Leona Theobald, I'm 16 and I'm a junior racing driver. I've been racing since last October and I have some friends that race and have followed them and done a bit of karting and now I love it. The championship I race in is for juniors specifically, so for 14 to 17 year olds, so we have a different licence compared to the adults. The grid is normally about 20 to 30 cars, so it's quite a big grid, so lots of competition out there. We run on road tyres, so it moves around a lot more. It has a 1.6 litre engine. It has 110 horsepower, so we can go 120 miles per hour as our top speed.
My name is Charlie. I'm 15 years old. I started flying around last August. Since then, I've been doing a number of lessons. So far, I've been working kind of towards my PPL, kind of gearing up for exams, not only at school because I'm kind of in that GCSE level, but also kind of working out things for my PPL because obviously I'm 15 in 2 years. I will be doing flight exams, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan.
Today, Charlie and Leona will provide a passenger ride to each other in their respective machines. We want to make sure that both women and individuals with a disability are aware of the opportunities that aviation and motorsport have to offer, be that being in control of the vehicle, or engineering, or volunteering. The list goes on.
Do you think you'll ever race professionally?
Hopefully, yeah. That's what I want to do.
Okay. Hey, let's go.
And the weather looks good, so let's go. So full power, all the way, all the way. Use your feet to keep it in the middle. And the speed, when we get to 50, you're going to rotate. That's 40, 50, okay, pull back slightly. 50, pull back. Little bit. I'll do, hold it there. And then relax slightly.
There we go. That's a good takeoff. Woo! Right in the back.
So I have ADHD and dyslexia. So the ADHD basically means that I find it very hard to focus on certain things for long periods of time. I'm much better suited to things where I can flick between different things at different times, all within the space of 5 seconds. So I'll be really energetic and really bubbly and kind of a bit out of it outside the airplane, but as soon as I'm in the aircraft, it's hyper-focusing all the way and I just become really calm and collected and I can just seemingly do it.
Thruxton is a very fast circuit. There's lots of fast corners. To begin with, it's a bit slower through turn 2 and 3, but in the middle of the circuit, it's very fast, flat out most of the time. And then a chicane back onto the start-finish straight where all the pits are.
So nice to be back in the air.
There we go, straight and level attitude, so push forward more. And then as it speeds up, we're going to hold it and then use your right hand to do the trimming.
It's actually really nice to have her in the back. Half the time I didn't actually realise she was there, but it was just nice to have someone else in the back, because normally it's just like me and an instructor. But it's really nice to have someone else in the back, because it's pressure because you have to get it right. But I feel like that's almost an incentive to do better and get it right. She's a very good passenger.
That'll do. Yep. And look out the front. Is that now is trimmed?
That was the most coolest thing I've probably ever done, and will probably ever do in my whole entire life. Thank you so much.
That's alright.
The chicane's the best bit.
Yeah,
and
it
was on the first row when you had to slow down, and I was like, oh god, like that.
You do fling forward.
Yep, I did.
Well, you seem to be enjoying it, so I went a bit faster. But yeah, just lifting on a few corners.
Yeah. I felt that you adjusted very well to
Good.
everything. You
didn't want to scare you too much.
It was amazing. It was such a good experience, and the way she was able to do everything, especially taking off, that was a pretty big thing. And it went really well. Had a little clap. I'd say her flying was a bit smoother than my driving, and I'd hope it to be that way.
Well, what a fun day out that looked, and well done to Leona and Charlie. Now, Charlie wouldn't be able to do what she does in those aeroplanes with Aerobility if it wasn't for the fundraising that we need to make for this fabulous charity. So please have a look at armchairairshow.com, where you can donate to fundraise for the charity. We've also got a text to donate service. If you text FLY3 to 70490, you will donate £3, and you can do any amount up to £20. So if you are generous and want to donate £20, please text FLY20 to 70490. I've also got to say a big thank you to our sponsors for the Armchair Airshow 2022. We have Aerobites, Bombardier, the Department for Transport, London Bignell Airport, and the fabulous surroundings we're in here, the Biggin Hill Heritage Hangar. So a big thank you very much to all of that. Now we're going to move over to George now, who's outside by a wonderful Bulldog aircraft.
Yeah, thanks, Licky. Well, here I am indeed, yes, outside, as you mentioned. And I hope you're enjoying the show, everybody. Please give us generously as you can. You're learning a lot about the charity and a lot about aviation as well. But this needs no introduction, this aircraft. It's very, very familiar to countless numbers of student pilots and, of course, all those young cadets as well over many, many years. But you can win the chance of going flying in this aircraft with the author of this particular book. And the book is all about human factors. And if you were undertaking a commercial pilot's license from any time from 1990 onwards, it was compulsory to learn a lot more about those factors. Now, the pilot and the book are synonymous with a man called Mike Bagshaw. He's not just a pilot, he is actually a professor of aviation medicine. He's held countless professional top-level appointments with both the CAA, with British Airways, with the Royal Air Force, and he's still doing it today at a very senior age and enjoying every bit of it in his blood. Now, I took the opportunity at his home base at Blackpush to go and have a chat with him and learn a little bit more about his own background, but also the amazing time he had flying the Hunter and the Jaguar as well. Let's take a look at it.
Well, I'm at HQ Aerobility today to interview yet another British aviation legend, Professor Mike Bagshaw. And there is a well-known saying that says, to err is to human. And this is a guy who knows quite a lot about that, because when I did my commercial pilot's license, it was the first year that the CAA introduced human factors training as a compulsory subject. I'm now going to talk to the guy that wrote the book. Well, Mike, we're sat in this wonderful Bulldog, and it's something we both have in common, this aircraft and the history of it. Tell me a little bit about this aircraft.
This aircraft was used as a basic trainer by the Royal Air Force from about 1973 to 2000. It was based with the Central Flying School at Cranwell, hence the blue band on the back, and at Topcliffe, where it was used to train Royal Air Force pilots, Royal Navy pilots primarily, and was also a branch of the Central Flying School.
It's extraordinary. I didn't realise our paths had crossed so closely. Myself having at Lincoln and Topcliffe. In fact, my first experience was on this. So let's go back in time together then. First of all, where did your inspiration to fly come from?
I sat on my father's knee in an Oster at the age of 4. and I got the bug then, and that's my earliest memory. And then later on, when I was about 10, I met a student undergoing training at the flying training school at Hallamington who was a doctor. And I noticed on his car he had a doctor's badge, so I asked him why. And he told me he was a doctor learning to fly to work in the profession of aviation medicine.
Well, I don't think you could have chosen two more rigorous professional ambitions. So how did you manage to balance medical training and flying training at the same time?
It was a struggle, and I first learnt to fly in 1965 with an RAF flying scholarship. I continued to fly.
If you want to watch the rest of that fascinating film, then go to the show notes page at armchairairshow.com. So, I'm now joined on the sofa by my team leader from the Blades Aerobatic team. I've got here with me Andy Evans, Blade 1. Welcome to the Armchair Airshow, Andy.
Thanks very much, mate.
Thanks for coming down. Now, I know everything about you, but our viewers don't. So can you just describe who you are and what the Blades are?
OK, so I'm the leader of the Blades, been with the Blades since 2006. Former RAF pilot, was an instructor on the Jet Provost and the Tucano, then flew Jaguars, flew in the Red Arrows for 3 seasons, and then joined the Blades in 2006 and been flying with the Blades ever since.
But you're also a former Red 10 as well, just like myself.
I am a former Red 10. I was very lucky. I did 3 years flying with the team, and then the team leader at the time invited me to stay on for an extra year, which was just amazing. As you've seen, you get to see so much more as Red 10, which you don't see when you're in the team, because you get to meet the public all the time, whereas you rarely get to meet them when you're in the team.
Andy's being very modest. He is, in fact, one of the most experienced Extra 300 pilots that there is. So the Blades fly the Extra 300, have done since 2006, which was the founding year of the team. And, in fact, Andy has under his own belt over 1,000 displays with the Blades. So tell us what the Blades are, what the Blades do. OK,
so the Blades are the only formation aerobatic team which have an accreditation as an airline to fly passengers. So the idea was you go out, you perform shows around the UK and Europe and worldwide if required, and offer the opportunity for the public to come and fly and experience what it's like to fly in close formation, just as you would do in the Red Arrows. I think that probably the better thing is with the Blades is you're flying in an Extra 300, which is an amazing aircraft. And then if you're really enjoying it, you can then experience some aerobatics which you just couldn't possibly fly in a jet.
And it's worth pointing out that the passengers in the Blades actually fly in the front of the aeroplane.
I know they do. They fly in the front. They have an amazing view. They're still flying only 12 feet apart from the other aircraft, so you get to see close formation as it should be flown. And if you're enjoying it, you get to see all sorts of different shapes, and you can also get to do formation loops. So you get to see the world upside down with 3 other aircraft around you.
And it is a lot of fun, and each passenger reacts differently to the flight, and I do urge you to come and have a go. Blades.com if you want to find out more, theblades.com. So it's worth pointing out that the team was actually founded by a former leader of the Red Arrows, and he saw a bit of a gap in the market. He was always asked, can I come flying with the Red Arrows? And of course the answer is no, because it's a military jet, you can't come flying with the Red Arrows. So he saw a bit of a gap in the market. As Andy said, they got the accreditation to become an airline, the world's only aerobatic airline, to put fare-paying passengers in the front of the aircraft and fly close formation aerobatics. But all of the team pilots are former Red Arrows pilots. And the way we do business during our displays is very much akin to that of the Red Arrows. The brief, fly, debrief process is very important to make sure that you can improve your own performance and put on a better display. So we've got a bit of footage now, Andy, from one of the training displays we did, I think it was last week.
OK.
So what we'd like to do, we're going to play it on the screen here, and we're going to watch it. We'll talk the viewers through what manoeuvre we're seeing, and then we're going to pick it apart and find out what went well and what didn't go well.
OK, let's roll the...
We can run the VT. This manoeuvre is...
OK, so this is crazy. So this is myself at the front upside down, number 2 and 3 flying completely out of balance, and number 4 is rotating barrel rolling around the back. Moving into the solo, so this is James doing his torque roll. And as you see, a nice straight smoke line, which is very good. There he is falling back through his smoke a good distance. So from our point of view, we like that. That's excellent. This is our set of twinkle rolls. So that's the first one. We do 3 sets in a row.
Well, that's
and we have a look
from me, actually.
So the timing is a little bit out there. We look as though we're starting at the same time as we did it there, but it does look as though number 3, I'm sorry that's you for this one, is rolling a bit slower. So we'd have to understand why you were rolling slower on that one. Coming in for one of our for the crossfire break, so we're trying to look at 1 and 4, making sure they had the right angles. There we go. This is crazy again with setting up. That's number 4 diving down at the back. So the idea is we want to try and get... In the previous years, it's been quite wide, and we've been trying to get it a little bit closer.
I think we just saw Tom Cassels and Michael Picken do a few of these.
Here we go, the blade slide. So this is James. And as he comes out, now what we're trying to get from here is we've delivered him at this crowd centre. He does all his manoeuvres. He needs to make sure he puts that blade slide in at crowd centre. Obviously
crazy.
Very keen on the crazy. It has to be said, it is one of our most photographed manoeuvres, so that's why it stays in the whole time. Now the tricky bit for James is, as I pull up and then come left, he needs to try and join us very quickly. Okay, this is another one of our manoeuvres that we're probably one of the only teams in the world that flies this. This is line abreast to go and fly at hammerhead, so everyone going to stall turn. We can see here the lengths are not as good as I'd like to see on the way up. 1, 2 and 3, who are on the left-hand side, moved at the same time, but number 4, for whatever reason, went a little bit late, so he was behind everything.
I ended up wide on the end of that as well.
You did end up wide.
Rate of rudder application.
The join into line of stern, that was good, and now we're trying to... It's very swift timing to get into line of stern, but that's now like a very good formation shape. And all I can say from this is quite a long run-in, so I possibly pulled up for the stall turn a little bit late, so I need to try and sort that timing out. Here we go into the snake, where we all go into a loop. And again, looks like number 4 is a little late on the pull there. Now, normally, there would be all 4 of us, and I wouldn't be pointing out these errors. Each pilot themselves would be saying what their error is.
Coming down the hill here,
Coming down the hill,
going short.
I say 3 is a little bit short. 4's just gone a little bit long, but it's gathered nicely. So, not one of our tidiest. So I would just say number 3 there looks like he's rolling quite slow.
It is a slow roll for number 3. Yeah.
That was a better set.
Better.
We like that set. Okay, and looks as are we going into the final?
This is a quarter clover.
Quarter clover, and we're going to be splitting.
Yeah, so 2 and 3 peeling
there
away
we go.
here.
So now we're looking for the angles between number 2 and number 3, which what we could see as much on that tape were very good. And now 1 and 4 we're going to be putting up into a heart.
It's a good one.
This is one of our new manoeuvres in the last year or two, where we got number 2 and 3 barrel rolling behind me, trying to do it in opposite sense. And myself as a leader, I'm going through a turn, but I'm also slow rolling at the same time. So rolling circle, which actually required an awful lot of training for numbers 2 and 3, because it's very disorientating.
It is a whole lot of fun to fly, but the first time we saw it with Andy's aeroplane rolling around very slowly, it throws your mind off as to orientation. It's very disorientating to start with. But
we certainly, when we learnt to do that one, we only did it as a pair. We were up high, and every single pilot that's flown in the number 2 slot had to break out at some stage, because what is happening, until you get used to it and you know what's happening, and then you can stay and do it.
It's a very dynamic display. That's one of the last manoeuvres we saw. The revolver finishes then with the final manoeuvre, the champagne split. It's around about a 15-minute display with all 4 aircraft. The solo aircraft is Blade 4, James McMillan. He does his own 2 solos throughout the display, but there's always something happening in front of the crowd, and that's the idea of the display. Andy designs the show, so that's the idea you've got when you're designing it.
That's it. So if you like it, please let me know, and if you don't like it, then you can tell Lingy. That's fine. And if you want to see us, I mean, next weekend we're down at Torbay. We're at a number of seaside shows this year, so anything down at the south coast, we're generally there. If you're up in the northwest, then Southport is a good one to be going to, and if you're out on the east coast, then Clacton is also where we're going to this year.
Brilliant, and as we already said, you can come flying with the Blades. Have a look at theblades.com, and you can come and have a fantastic time in either mine, Andy's, James or Ben's aircraft doing close formation aerobatics. It's a whole lot of fun. Right, so we are getting ready now for the next part of the show, and we are going to move on to George and Liz, who I think might be having a bit of champagne by the looks of it.
Oh, sorry, sorry, guys. Actually, we were just trying to practice the Blade champagne split, but we've obviously been caught out a little bit. But anyway, right there, I've lost that already. But Liz, as you know, has just got oodles of time on the Chinook. She joined the Royal Air Force as a crewman at the age of 19, and recently had an opportunity to reacquaint herself up at the museum in Cosford with her old friend, Bravo November, famous, well-known, well-documented Chinook. Let's hear a little bit about that amazing story without the champagne.
So today I'm up at the RAF Museum Midlands, which was formerly known as RAF Cosford. and I'm visiting, well, you all know that the Chinook is the aircraft that's closest to my heart, but this particular Chinook especially is the one that is closest to my heart. And this, of course, is the very famous Bravo November, which is the only Chinook that made it out of the Falklands campaign in one piece. Now, I'm joined today by Tom Hopkins, who works here at the museum and has been one of the team that's been instrumental in getting this brilliant aircraft up here. So I'm going to hand over to you, Tom, if you could just explain to everyone what you do up here, and then we'll go and talk a little bit about Bravo November.
Thanks, Liz. So I'm Tom Hopkins. I'm a curator of aircraft and exhibits here at the RAF Museum Midlands. So I look after all the larger 3D objects, including the great big things like this helicopter here.
And it is large.
It is very large, yeah. 100-foot span from the rotor blade to rotor blade, nearly 19 feet tall. It's a beast. But really exciting to have it here. It's got such presence in the hangars.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not just a Chinook in general that makes it special. This is Bravo November. This is the Survivor. Such a long and fantastic history.
Yeah, so if you could tell us a little bit about it. Obviously, I just alluded to the fact that it's the one that came back from the Falklands. So if you could just tell anyone who doesn't know the story of Bravo November, watching at home, just a little bit more about it.
Yeah, sure. So it all goes back to the Falklands conflict, 1982. Bravo November was one of 5 Chinooks loaded up onto the Atlantic conveyor, prepared for the long voyage down to the South Atlantic. One of the others took off and was doing stuff on Ascension Island, halfway there. Then the Atlantic conveyor continued its journey, now with just 4 Chinooks. Bravo November took off, was doing a job at the time when the Atlantic conveyor was struck by 2 Exocet missiles. And unfortunately, the explosion and resulting fire severely damaged the ship, sank a few days later. Bravo November, of course, was airborne at this time, away flying on a job, but the other 3 Chinooks sank along with Bravo November.
And never made it out alive. So has the aircraft got a nickname, hasn't it, from that event?
The Survivor. It was the only British heavy lift helicopter left in the theatre.
Yeah. And then it went on to do many other things after that. So obviously it's most famous for surviving the Falklands, which is really special this year because it's obviously the 40th anniversary of the Falklands. So what a great year to have it arrive at the museum. And I'm sure there's lots of people who will be coming to have a look around it, and it'll be evoking lots of memories with those individuals. But it has gone on to make some other stories as well, hasn't it, since the Falklands?
Yeah, it's had a fantastically long career. I mean, 40 years. What an airframe.
So knowing that I was coming to look at Bravo November today, I thought it'd be a good chance to take out my logbook and see how many times I've flown on her and what interesting stories I've got of Bravo November. And one of the things that threw up was that my very first ever Chinook flight in 2003 was on board this very aircraft, and it was CL6 Chinook Famil at RAF Odeon. And in a lovely twist of fate, I discovered that my last ever Chinook flight in February 2018, some 3,000 flying hours later, deployments and exercises all around the world, but my last flight ever was again on Bravo November. As if that wasn't enough, the final icing on the cake is that was down in the Falklands, moving an underswing load of a Land Rover across to Byron landing site, and that is what Bravo November did best, was underslinging things around the Falklands. So what a lovely end to a really great aircraft story, and a really great career story for me. This aircraft will always be very, very, very special and close to my heart. Thank you for looking after her, Tom. Make sure you do a good job. And please don't dust her, because I think she likes a little bit of dust. I think she suits a little bit of dust. But yeah, if you want to come and see Bravo November, she's available for the public to walk around the edge, and will possibly be opened up for special events only. So keep an eye on the museum website for that.
Well, that really is an iconic aircraft. 40 years service in the Royal Air Force and still going strong. And I'm joined on the sofa by Liz. So how was that? How was the visit back to Bravo November at Cosford?
Do you know what? It was really, really emotional. I didn't think I would get so emotional, but as soon as I stood on the ramp of the aircraft, the smell of hydraulic and all that just takes you straight back to flying on it. And I left the Air Force just over 2 years ago. So yeah, took me straight back to my flying days, and felt like we stood there getting my flying suit. So yeah, brilliant.
Now, for any TV programme with someone coming on to promote a book, I gather you've written one. What's it called and what's it about?
So it's called Chinook Crew Check, and it's obviously a book about my career in the Air Force from joining age 19 all the way through to leaving a couple of years ago, and throughout that time doing 2 deployments to Iraq and 10 to Afghanistan. So yeah, it's a bit of everything in there, and also just hopefully a bit of inspiration for females going into that role as well, because there wasn't that many female crewmen ever, and at one point I was the only one as well. So yeah. So please bid on it on the auction.
So it's in the auction
it's
and
in
it's
the
signed?
auction, yes,
Right.
signed copy, yeah.
Good. And now we've got something else in the Chinook in the auction, haven't
We have. One of my friends from ODM very kindly has donated Chinook Blade with some 40th anniversary writing on it, and it's absolutely unique. It's a one-off. So yeah, have a look on the auction site and get bidding on that as well.
Brilliant. Okay, well, bid hard on that auction item. We know one-offs here, and there's plenty of other items as well that you can bid on that you won't find anywhere else. Okay, so coming up next is a video clip about an aircraft that really is an unsung hero. It was an American 4-engined transport aircraft, and I caught up with the owner of the Save the Skymaster project at North Weald. Take a look.
Money will make this aeroplane fly at the end of the day. £1 million will get this aeroplane in the air. 2 million would set up would preserve it for a long, long time.
Welcome to a sunny North Weald airfield here in Epping, Essex. We're here to talk about an incredible American aircraft, the Douglas C-54 Skymaster. I'm joined by Alan Vogel, who is the director of the Save the Skymaster project, a plan to get this aircraft returned to flight. Alan, welcome to the Armchair Airshow.
Thank you, John. It's great to have you guys here and on board.
What is the lineage of this aircraft? Because it does look very World War II, despite being, a nose-wheel aeroplane.
It is. It was the family of the DC-4, so very mid-30s, Douglas development. It was quite a successful airliner, and then at the outbreak of World War II, the Americans really needed transport aircraft that could fly pretty long distance. They converted the DC-4s into C-54s, and then obviously started manufacturing C-54s throughout the course of the war. Its main capability was as a heavy lifter and endurance. So this could fly for 4,000 nautical miles, about 20 hours non-stop.
So, Alan, how did this aircraft end up here at North Weald?
It was acquired by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg in 2002 to actually make a film about the Candy Bomber, which was a story about the Berlin airlift, its pilot, and one of the famous pilots, Colonel Gal Halverson. Funny enough, he was in this aircraft when it landed here at North Weald in September 2002. He's probably sitting in your seat. She's already alive. We've had 3 engines running on this. When we turned all the electrics on for the very first time, all the lights went on, right through the cabin, down through the cargo bay, and it's all down to the guys that have blood, sweat, and tears into these volunteers that come from all over UK. So a bit of work that needs to be done, and the priorities along here are getting the outer wing replaced, and as we can see here, we've got corrosion on the outer spark gap. So this whole outer wing needs replacing.
And power plants, Pratt & Whitney's?
We are very, very fortunate to have Pratt & Whitney just recently in the last week come on board as a full sponsor. And having a big name brand like that join us just shows that we are credible.
Yeah, hopefully others will follow as a result.
We've recently had a visit from Rolls-Royce, who worked very closely with Boeing, who are the design authority on this aeroplane. We should be able to get lots of repairs and work done that is required, working with the design authority being Boeing. The guys can only do as much as they can on a voluntary basis. And add their bit, but we're fixing stuff that's broken. We're putting a patch on it. How long will it take? We're totally money dependent, and unfortunately that cost increases annually as we don't achieve our goal. So the goalposts do move slightly, but I think we're in for a good year. We're getting a lot of good support, good sponsorship coming on board, and some big name sponsors.
It's been a really good day out for us. Thank you very much for hosting us. We look forward to seeing more of this incredible project. Thank you very much.
Wow, how great to see a fantastic piece of aviation heritage, and the fact that it's still supporting veterans today. Now, Aerobility is really grateful to be supported by the Department for Transport. And we had the opportunity to pose some questions to the Minister for Aviation, Robert Courts MP. So let's go and find out what he thinks about his favourite aviator and also the future of aviation.
Hello everyone, I'm Robert Courts and I'm the Minister for Aviation at the Department for Transport. It's brilliant to welcome people from all around the world to the 2022 Armchair Airshow. Well, for 30 years, Aerobility has been providing people, whatever their disability, the opportunity to experience the magic and the wonder of aviation. And the department has been supporting now for 3 years the Armchair Airshow. It's absolutely fantastic to have so many people here so that they can enjoy, wherever they are, the magic of airshows from the comfort of their own home. So look, for the whole of my life, I have absolutely loved aviation. My grandfather and my great uncle both served in the RAF during the war, so I have that family history, if you like, of aviation as well. And ever since I was a boy, I've absolutely loved it, all kinds. So GA, light aircraft, historic aircraft, commercial flight, because there's nothing quite like getting up into the sky. There's nothing like that feeling of freedom, the feeling of opportunity, that bouncing up through the clouds and getting to that land where the sky's always blue and the rain is way below you. It's a fantastic thing. It brings so much to individuals and to the country as a whole, and I love all forms of aviation. This is a really difficult question because there's so many people I'd love to see on the Armchair Airshow. But if I had to pick one, I'd have to pick a historic aviator, and that'd undoubtedly be Douglas Bader. Because if you're looking for someone who has the absolute determination to make sure that he succeeds no matter what, it has to be Douglas Bader. Utterly extraordinary life, who went through so many difficult challenges but ultimately succeeded and continued to do what he wanted to do. Hugely inspiring individual. So out of the many thousands that I could choose, I'd have to choose Douglas. So the last aircraft I was in was only last week, and it was a Britten-Norman Islander. It was flying on Skybus, and it was fantastic to be on this because the Britten-Norman Islander, of course, is a great British success story from an aerospace perspective, but it was also nice and small. So it's real aviation where you really can feel that you're up in the air, which was absolutely fantastic. So I hugely enjoyed that. But a highlight of the last few months has been a Chipmunk. I had a flight in a Chipmunk recently, which was absolutely fantastic. So, of course, the big first thing is recovering from COVID. That's obviously true for the commercial sector, which has been, of course, badly hit over the course of the last couple of years. But it's true for GA as well. Got to make sure that we can get people back in the sky and get people being trained again, get introducing new people to the wonders of flight and to the incredible future that aviation can offer. So that's the first thing. And that links quite closely to skills and to diversity as well. It's really important that we get more people from all backgrounds, that we're drawing from the entire full talent pool of people that's available to aviation. So there's a couple of things we're doing. We have the aviation ambassadors in the DFT. We've just appointed 12, and their job is to get out and sell the wonders of aviation. Not only that it's great fun, hugely rewarding career in it for you as well. We've also launched a couple of platforms through the DFT, the Aviation Skills Retention Platform and Talent View Aviation. And those are intended to keep people in the sector if they're already trained, but also to bring new people in as well and to attract them as well. Now, from a GA perspective, we've also introduced something called the GA Roadmap. We want the UK to be the best place in the world for general aviation, and we've produced this roadmap, this plan for how we're going to go out and do that. So there's lots of challenges there, but also there's huge opportunity as well, and we're looking forward to really working with everybody in the sector to make the UK the best place for general aviation, and through general aviation, which, let's not forget, supports about 40,000 jobs, about £4 billion into the UK economy. Through that, it's the real grassroots of the aviation sector for the future that we all need. So there's a real part for everybody to play here. So government, through things like the roadmap and through the aviation ambassadors, can have structures in place that help sell the wonders of aviation. But there's a place for everybody in this. So to your friends and family, to people in your local community, help sell the message that whatever your background in life, wherever you come from, there's a place in aviation for you. It may be flying, it may be some of the engineering aspects of it as well. Aviation is varied and it's vast and it's incredibly exciting. So wherever you come from, there's something for you, and that's a job for everyone everyone out there to play their part in spreading that message as well, as much as it is for me and for government. So as we come out of COVID, which obviously has been a major challenge, and some of those issues that we've talked about already, we also have decarbonisation. That's a big challenge for aviation, of course, because it's a hard to decarbonise sector. But with every challenge, there's great opportunity as well, and that's particularly the case for GA. Because when you start looking at some of the technologies that are going to be replacing fossil fuels in due course, that might be electric, might be hydrogen, those things, and some of the supporting ground network that will make all that possible, the test bed for that's likely to be general aviation. So there's a place for you in decarbonising aviation, you know, no matter where you are in the country. It's not all going to be the big commercial things. Critical though that will be, a lot of it will start with GA, so you can look to getting involved, and this is massive, because in the extraordinary 100-year history of aviation that we've had so far, there have been a number of profound sea changes in the way that it's been conducted, but we're coming up to another one of those, so decarbonising, there's a place in it for you, and that is hugely exciting. Well, I absolutely love Airshow season. It's that incredible time of year where you get to watch aircraft from all over the world, and all those things that excite us so much. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the weather's pretty good as well because it's summer. But it's really important that everybody can experience this wherever they are in the country and whatever their circumstances. So the Armchair Airshow gets to bring the thrill and the enjoyment and the pleasure of airshows to everybody wherever they are. But more than that, it also really helps Aerobility with fundraising. So it's a critical part of that as well. And I know that it's raised over £40,000 for them recently. So it's a hugely important thing, both in bringing the thrill of air shows to everybody, but also in raising money as well for this critically important good cause.
And I am now joined by some of the Department of Transport's aviation ambassadors. So welcome all. Thank you all for coming down to see us today. And first of all, we're going to go to Concorde. If you can tell us a little bit about the Reach for the Sky programme that you guys are running.
Thank you, Liz, very much for inviting us all. And the Reach for the Sky programme is very much about making sure that we support grassroots aviation, that we support young people and those from disadvantaged backgrounds to get into aviation, so through outreach programmes, etc. And actually links in really well with one of my roles with the CAA. They've got a fantastic STEM programme, very much promoting the Reach for the Sky aims. They've got 4 different pillars. I also founded the Aviatrix project about 6 years ago, which is also about encouraging women and girls into aviation, but also those from disadvantaged backgrounds as well. And I think, you know, I've been in education and I'm a pilot as well, and I've tried to marry the two together. And there are so many different gaps here in terms of skills and, you know, also giving those opportunities to as many people as we can. And, you know, this is why we're all really, really passionate about being here and supporting you and really encouraging everyone to get into aviation and just experience, you know, this incredible world, really. And the more diverse people we have in the industry, the more diversity of thought we have. And that's really what we need in terms of the, you know, future of the workforce.
Absolutely agree. And Ivana, you've been doing some work in Africa, I believe, as an ambassador, and also with the 99s project, is that right?
That's correct. So I'm part of the African Section 99s, the governor for the African Section 99s. So we've been doing very similar work to what we do here, part of the Reach for Sky program as well, promoting aviation to the youth. We are a women's organisation, the 99s. For those that don't know the 99s, it was started in 1929 by Amelia Earhart. We have 6,000 members and based in 44 different countries, depending on the sections and the chapter's geographical locations. So African section was only started very recently, but we have been promoting grassroots programs, especially for the youth. There are less than 1% of women represented as females in flying in Africa, and so our main goal is to try and encourage a lot more youth. So through our STEM initiatives, that's what we've been doing. It doesn't only benefit girls, it's also for the boys as well. General aviation is lacking, especially in the UK and Africa, and we need to see more youth involved in aviation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you.
That's great. And Susie, I believe you've been doing a lot of work as well in terms of getting women into aviation.
Yes, I'm trying. I'm a captain with British Airways. I'm trying to increase the visibility of female pilots. So I do school talks. Last year I spoke to over 2,000 pupils, and just trying to inspire them to choose a career in aviation. I think they say that men tend to choose to be a pilot, an airline pilot, by the age of 10, whereas for women it's 16. So, for instance, in the UK we only have 6% of the airline pilots are actually female. I'm also mentor on Speedbirds Air, the platform hosted by British Airways, and we have a platform there where young people can connect with us and ask us information about our careers to give them insights.
Wow. Well, look, we've heard lots from the girls, so let's hand over to the boys and let's hear from the lads. Tim, do you want to tell us a little about your involvement as an ambassador?
Yeah, we're a social enterprise, and we've developed modular electric conversion kits for light aircraft, rugged sort of bush planes, a bit like the J3. But we're now, the prototype's well into development, so we're now moving into sort of STEM engagement phase where we get students, schools and colleges to replicate our build. So we get junior engineers to start leading teams of younger students who are just getting into STEM, and give them real hands-on experience on airframes early in their career while delivering cheap bush planes to NGOs in the developing world.
Wow. And Travis, we obviously talked a little bit about getting lots of youth inspired into aviation, but obviously, Travis, you're a walking, talking example of that. So what have you been doing as an ambassador then? You've been getting out to schools and universities, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge supporter of getting the youth into aviation and getting the youth to follow their dreams. And I've been talking to going around to universities, schools, and just encouraging kids. And I think the passion that they have and the passion they have to get into aviation, even if they don't have the right background, just to work hard and follow their dreams. That's what I love to do, and support them into following their goals. And I think that telling them my story, they're just hugely inspired by it, and I think it's a privilege to talk to them.
Yeah, and we'll be hearing more about Travis's story later on. And we couldn't finish this segment, obviously, without hearing from our very own Mike Miller-Smith. So, Mike, what's your involvement as an ambassador, and what do you bring?
Well, I am the Chief Executive at Aerobility, charity, hopefully, which is being talked about a fair bit today. We make aviation accessible to disabled people. So whatever it takes, we've got the right techniques, the right attitudes and the right aircraft adapted for disabled people to fly, but also a hoist that can lift somebody in if they need that help. But also it's about awareness, so helping the aviation industry know that disabled people would like to fly, and also look at the future of aviation. eVTOLs and the future of flight, the flying taxi, let's make sure they are disabled accessible as possible. And it's great to show disabled people that aviation is welcoming and open. They can fly, they can work, they can enjoy the magic of flight. So it's great for myself as an ambassador to be able to take that story on the road and tell as many people as possible.
Great. Well, listen, thank you all for coming down to spend the day with us this afternoon, and just keep doing what you're doing and kind of increasing the diversity of this industry. It's just so important. So, yeah, keep up the great work. And now back to George on the sofa.
Liz, just a wonderful day we're having here. You can understand that it's a pretty dynamic environment we're working in at the moment. You've heard so much going on. There are live aircraft operating. Literally, I'm looking out of the hangar door right now. I've also warmed up a little bit as well. It was absolutely freezing wind here first thing this morning from the north, but we're all getting there slowly. So there are a few changes. Now, I'm going to surprise my hosts, John and Lingy, in a moment, because they're not going to do what they thought they were doing next. They're going to do something else. But first of all, let me add my congratulations to Mike Miller-Smith and to Travis as well for achieving this status of aviation ambassadors. Mike still is a legend in my mind, and to many others indeed, for the inspiration that he has brought to aviation in general, but most of all, of course, to those less able than many of us that have enjoyed it. I've just heard, because of the changes in the airspace management, there have been a lot of activities going on. Obviously, Farnborough isn't able to accept all the business jets that it should be going there, so we've taken them in. That's changed the schedule a little bit for us for the flying displays, and I've been told that in 2 minutes' time, going to our live flying displays. So while we're resetting for that, and John and Lingy having a bit of a flash panic and running outside, I'll just remind you that, of course, without the help of many, many other people, we just shouldn't be able to put this sort of activity on. Nats right up at the top there, they're so embedded in running aviation throughout the UK, but they've been particularly helpful to the charity over the years, and going back to the time that we did the big pull at Goodwood, they've just gone from strength to strength in keeping the charity alive, buying a single aeroplane under their command as well. The Blades, of course, adding a great deal to the whole party as well. Aerotiques, I'm surrounded by some wonderful pieces of aviation history here behind me, and absolutely valuable pieces of history. And of course, Pooley's Aviation as well. Without them, and Breitling, as always, deeply embedded. But I hear the sound of aviation. Let's go outside now to our roving ambassadors, reporters and commentators, John and Lingy.
Well, thank you very much, George. Well, just getting airborne off runway 03 here at Biggin Hill is Tim Dews in the Grob 109, an aircraft, in fact, which Aerobility is now very closely associated with. You may have heard of Project Able. You've heard about that already. This is an incredible project to reimagine the former Royal Air Force Vigilant T1 glider air cadet at University Air Squadron training aircraft. But Tim can do things with this aeroplane that many can't. He's an accomplished display pilot, aerobatic pilot at that, and you'll see him put this aircraft through its paces a little bit later on. He's just getting airborne to reposition. He'll be the second item on the show today. But our first item, Lingy, you're going to introduce this for us.
I am. It's going to be the Little and Large show. This is actually a fantastic thing to see at air shows. We've got a full-size Extra 300 and a radio-controlled Extra 300, and they'll be performing synchronised manoeuvres, which is no mean feat. As a modeller myself, I've got a couple of radio-controlled aircraft, and they're quite tricky to do at the best of times. So to do it synchronised with a live aircraft during a live display is going to be something special to watch.
I agree. I think the word there is trust, is it not? You know, you've seen the trust that had to occur between Michael and Tom in their formation aerobatic display. You know, they're using radio cadence, they're using practiced manoeuvres, but we've got two people here who are, one is on the ground and one is in the air. And if you look out over to runway 21 in the opposite direction, you'll see the Extra 300 getting airborne.
Yeah, a little downwind takeoff. That's runway 21 with the wind slightly from the north, but he's taken off downwind, which gets him nicely in position so he can get ready to run in from our left window for
Now the model aircraft is flown by a very accomplished model display pilot, Mike Williams, and you know, obviously you want to be having an airplane that's in the same piece of sky as you, with someone who's obviously particularly experienced in what they're doing.
Coming in from the south end, from crowd left, we've got Chris Burkett in his Extra 300, and I think to synchronise the takeoff now, here comes the model, smoke systems on, Little and Large.
Absolutely fantastic. I've never seen this before, Lingy. I just can't believe the fact that we've got a full-size right-hand side and a radio-controlled aircraft in the same colours, 41% scale.
So a stall turn there, absolutely synchronised with the model and the real aircraft. Pulling down now, bit of G as they recover, pitching up into what looks to be another vertical manoeuvre. No, they're taking this into a loop. He's just extending with the model there. Of course, he's being affected by the wind much more than the real size aircraft. Coming down to the bottom of the loop. You don't know which way around which is which. This is definitely one of my favourites to watch at an air show. Now into the vertical. Nice Lomshavak.
Now, that is all rubbing your stomach and patting your head stuff, isn't it? Just rudder and aileron in the corners of the cockpit.
Exactly that. And the fact that the model does it exactly, it's like a knife edge into it. Sorry, 4-point roll by the looks of it. Again, absolutely synchronised. The skill of that radio-controlled model pilot is something else.
And you'll notice in some of these manoeuvres, of course, in terms of separation and deconfliction, there'll be the majority of these manoeuvres. Chris will have sight of what Mike is doing in the model aircraft.
Quite a lot of G there as they pull up into what looks like another loop. Again, just as the Starlings were affected by the airspace, so keeping that loop below 1,900 feet so they don't go into the London airspace. You can actually hear the noise of both aircraft, which I think is fantastic. Into the vertical, got a 4-point roll in the vertical. Pulling over the top. Vertical down the hill again, pulling out probably at about 4.5 to 5 G by the looks of it as they come down to 100 feet. Straight into another pull-up. A roll left. And still rolling. Now, this is called a torque roll. The ailerons, the control surfaces, haven't got any air flowing them as they go so slow, but the aircraft is still rotating, and that's just an opposite reaction to the torque of the engine, hence the torque roll. As they complete a tail slide and out to the north. The model has now gone to the south, the full-size aircraft to the north, setting up for what I think might be an opposition pass. Speeding up, you can hear the model engine, quite slow from Chris from the right. Lovely flick roll. The model inverted now as he climbs out to the north. Chris finishing over to the south, positioning away. The model aircraft now going into some individual aerobatics. Now, of course, we have minimum heights we can fly in full-size aircraft. Looks like the model doesn't have the same minimum height supplied.
So a little bit about the pilots. So Chris Burkett, who you see coming in from the left-hand side here in the Extra 300. He's been an enthusiast all his life and first flew aerobatics in the de Havilland Chipmunk as an RAF cadet. And then he later owned his own Chipmunk. And that aircraft could not do manoeuvres like this, that's for sure.
He just had the model there on a prop hanging on his propeller as Chris came through on the knife edge behind him. What a brilliant shot that would have been. Tight turn round back towards us from the north.
A little bit about Mike Williams, who's flying the radio-controlled model, and he started flying radio-controlled models at the age of 9, and at 10 was learning aerobatics. And today he's one of the UK's foremost competition and display model pilots, and his achievements include the British Freestyle Champion, Top Gun Aerobatics Champion twice, and also numerous wins at the F3A Pattern Aerobatics, and also at international level. Absolutely fantastic achievements there for Mike.
Another knife edge pass from the both of them. The full-size aircraft accelerating away from the model. Now, Chris did tell me before the show he was going to go into his own individual manoeuvres, so perhaps that's what he's positioning now from the right. The model's diving down. Maybe a split towards the crowd. There we go, Chris breaking up. The model breaking away over to the west. And Chris flicking inverted. Setting up for his solo routine.
So he's going to now be judging the wind, speed and direction, making those calculations, considering how he turns early or anticipates the wind effect.
Now watching the model do his own freestyle. Nice hard pull from Chris, probably about 6G. That's a Mulleroyd up into a, looks like a flat spin.
Oh, yeah,
flat spin coming down. The Extra very forgiving when it comes to spin recovery. It's very crisp. The rudder is huge, the elevator's huge, and the aileron's almost full span at the trailing edge of the wings. It does what you tell it to do when it comes to spin recoveries.
And of course, when you're doing aerobatics in a model aircraft and the aircraft is in a particular trail of flight, you've got to do everything in reverse to keep the airplane in the air.
It's the most off-putting thing when you're flying it towards you and you roll one way and it goes the opposite. It's certainly something you've got to get your head around. Model coming down from on high on the 45 as Chris climbs on the 45 into a tumble. Just remember, if you are enjoying the Armchair Airshow, you can donate to the fabulous Aerobility. Text FLY with a number that you would like to donate, up to £20. So if you would like to donate £20, text FLY20 to 70490, or go to armchairairshow.com and hit the donate button. You can tell by Chris's angle there that he's got a lot of top rudder to keep the aircraft flying straight as he dips his left wing. Nicely following that model around the sky. Imagine they're setting up for landing now, John. He seems to have slowed down as he goes off to our left.
Yes, absolutely. I think so too. The wind is allowing them to make the choice of a runway 03 or 21 landing.
Most of my landings in models are controlled crashes, if I'm honest. I'm not that good at landing model aircraft. I think Andy Evans would probably say that I'm not that good at landing real aircraft either. So, side slip all the way down to the runway from Chris, controlling his speed, last minute, kicking off the drift, and he has touched down on runway 03. There we go, the little and large, which I have to say is one of my absolute favourites at an air show. Well done to those guys. I imagine that's just very difficult to fly, and I'm not going to try it in my model aircraft, that's for sure.
And those aircraft are tailwheel aircraft, and actually, you know, you'll notice some aircraft have a nose at the front, nose wheel aircraft, some aircraft have a nose wheel at the back, and actually in gusty wind conditions with what we call a crosswind, an aircraft with the wheel at the back can be quite a challenge to control. So good work from Chris. Right, now talking of model aircraft, if we come over here and take a look at what the 2427 Biggin Hill Air Cadets have been up to, they've been building a model aircraft of their own, and I can see Flight Sergeant Langham there is ready with the microphone to tell us all about it. But before I ask the first question to you, Biggin Hill Airports have been very generous, and they set a challenge to the Air Training Corps to come up with a STEM-related project to support education and STEM awareness with the ATC, and they had to do a Dragon's Den presentation to the board of directors here at Biggin Hill, and they came up with a model aircraft concept, obviously, you know, very similar to what operates out of here, a business jet, to support the marketing endeavours of London Biggin Hill Airport, but also to support the STEM awareness for young people. So, Flight Sergeant Langham, what are we looking at here on the table?
So here we have Free Wing's brand new business jet aircraft. That obviously you heard from getting the SPG, which was Special Project Group, which we named for this whole project that the airport set us. And so what we're aiming to do at the end is try and get a new livery on this, and then tie it in really with the airport and get sort of their colours, so the blue, the gold and the white, and just tie it all together, and then also make this just a big STEM project for the squadron, because we've got a 3D printer. We could print little pilots in there, and yeah, I think it's just to push anyone that's interested in STEM at our squadron, just to get them sort of more excited about it.
Very well said. Now, tell us what the date of the first flight's planned to be then, and where will it be?
Date is need to be confirmed at the moment, but that's going to be at my local flying club. And nervous day, that'll be nervous, but it should be good. I've seen that it flies well, so it should be a good flight.
And you're accompanied by your Special Projects Group colleagues here who've all been participating in the build, so congratulations, and we'll look forward to seeing the aircraft flying very soon. Now, to my right-hand side is the commanding officer of 2427 Biggin Hill Squadron, Squadron Leader John Wogamuth. John, this is a pretty awesome project, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, it really is quite amazing, and we really thank the airport for you know, putting their trust into the cadets, into building this, and the other equipment they've basically purchased on our behalf. So yeah, really looking forward to pushing STEM-related subjects in aviation as well.
Sure, absolutely, and there's a very close bond, isn't there, between the airport and the Air Training Corps here at Biggin Hill?
Yeah, just last week we signed our covenant between the airport and the squadron and the Air Training Corps for a 5-year period where the cadets can actually now get involved, and the airport will facilitate getting us on the airfield, talking to the tenants here at Biggin Hill, and hopefully just bringing the airport alive to the cadets, where the cadets actually see this airport as their airport and learn about aviation from the airport.
Fantastic. Now, my last question, John, is if there's any young people watching the show or parents, how can they get involved with the Air Training Corps? I'm going to make this a very quick answer because I can see an airplane above my head.
Basically, you've got to be in Year 8 at school and look on the Air Cadet website. So just type in Air Cadets into Google, and you'll probably find the Air Cadet website. And there's a squadron finder on there.
Well, very many thanks, John, and well done to you all. And we'll be looking forward to seeing this airplane flying very soon. Above my head, Lingy, I can see a Grob 109.
And it's not making a lot of noise at all. Having just heard Chris's extra and the model, we've got quite a quiet aircraft here, which is actually a motor glider, the Grob 109, trailing what looks like the colours of the Ukraine flag.
Indeed. Tim Jews is indeed trailing the colours of Ukraine. And this aircraft is, as I said earlier on, this is the type of aircraft, the origins of which the Grob Able project has come alive for Aerobility. And this airplane, it's all about energy management here, Lingy, isn't it? It hasn't got the same sized engine as an extra 300.
No, he started very high, so he's doing all his vertical manoeuvres, or his looping manoeuvres, starting with a high height, because during every single one of these iterations, he's losing energy. So he's losing that potential energy he started with by pulling these loops and rolls, just because of the way the engine doesn't give as much power as other aerobatic aircraft. But starting high, and actually you can see how tight the loops are. He's flying very small loops.
Yeah, absolutely. And this aeroplane has a low wing loading, but if you look at something like an F-104 Starfighter or an F-16, those aircraft have a very high wing loading. And so what that means for Tim, essentially, is lots of work in the cockpit. It's a bit of a windy day here. And Lingy talked about potential energy. We also have kinetic energy. And between the two, he's basically swapping between the two, Lingy, isn't he, to produce this aerobatic routine for us, because that's not a big engine up front.
No, so as he's diving down off a loop, that's building up the speed, ready to give him his entry parameters for his next manoeuvre. And he just goes into a lovely tight barrel roll as he positions off away to our right. Now, this was similar to the Royal Air Force Air Cadets Vigilant glider that unfortunately doesn't fly with the cadet service anymore. But it was the powered version of the gliders that the cadets were flying. And now Tim is presenting it with the airborne pyrotechnics. And, of course, as we've already had from John, Project Able for Aerobility.
Indeed. Now, flying gliders in the Jews family is something that is a pretty popular thing. Tim's 3 sons also fly this aircraft. And, indeed, his eldest son pairs up with him in a pairs display that they also do at night with, would you believe, fireworks on the wingtips.
And day glow or neon lights all the way down the side of the aircraft. It's quite impressive to watch. So it's always good to watch them come into land at an airfield with those big neon lights glaring.
Absolutely. Now, this airplane, you can actually switch the engine off. So this aircraft is a real performer. You know, we talked about those long wings, finding thermals, flying cross-country. Indeed, there's competitions to judge your ability as a pilot and your navigation skills on long-range gliding navigation competitions. But it looks like he's bringing the aircraft into land now. And I think that was a pretty cool effort from Tim. You know, it's pretty challenging conditions today for such a small and lightweight aircraft.
I think they're always impressive displays to watch with gliders, even though it's a motor glider, but still impressive to watch. Just ask the cadets we've got here. Has anyone been gliding? A few of you have been gliding. And what did you think of the gliding?
Absolutely brilliant.
Where did you do that? Uphaven, one of the volunteer gliding schools. Well, that noise that interrupted our cadet friend there was the Mark 9 Spitfire from the Biggin Hill Heritage Hangar. This is the Spirit of Kent, and that 27-litre Rolls-Royce Merlin being fired into life on TA 805, the Spirit of Kent, with Mark Fluin at the helm. He started out, he's just going to let the engine warm up a little before he taxis, and then he'll be off to the end of the runway to do his engine checks and then get ready for his display. Now, we are lucky enough, I think, to have some cameras fitted to this aircraft, which hopefully, if all the tech works, we'll be able to beam live footage of Mark doing his display into your screens as you're sat watching the Armchair Air Show. Just remember, you can donate to Aerobility by texting FLY with a number after. So for £20, it's FLY20 to 70490. Or visit armchairairshow.com and you can hit the donate button. There's also an auction running on that website, so please have a look at the auction lots and have a look at what you would like to bid on. I'm going to walk over towards this lovely Spitfire now and enjoy the noise as Mark warms the engine up.
Well, of course, the Spitfire aircraft is inextricably linked to Biggin Hill. Of course, many people associate the Battle of Britain victory with the Spitfire. Actually, I have to tell you that the Hurricane scored 64% of all kills on Luftwaffe aircraft, but if it wasn't for the Spitfire, we could simply not have won the Battle of Britain. Between the Hurricane and the Spitfire, it's the freedoms that we enjoy today, all those years ago, with the battle fought above our heads here in Kent. But the aircraft operated here until 1950 with the Auxiliary Air Force. 600 and 615 Squadron were based here. And the Spitfire effectively was a short-range interceptor. And the next, or the last British interceptor that was built and designed in the UK, of course, was the English Electric Lightning.
There are a number of Spitfires here at Biggin Hill, and people just associate Biggin Hill with the Battle of Britain and the sound of those Merlin engines operating every day. And it's relatively constant with the two-seat variants of Spitfires they've got, giving passenger experience rides. In fact, in the hangar behind us, we are hopefully going to find some time to show you what is in the hangar. We have a Hurricane, a Mark 16 Spitfire, and a Messerschmitt 109. And the Messerschmitt 109 that is in the hangar actually fought in the Battle of Britain. So in the summer of 1940, based in France, it was operating over the Channel, fighting these Royal Air Force units that would have launched from this very airfield. The one that's in the hangar was actually was damaged on the 2nd of September 1940. It belly landed in Calais, and then it didn't see any action for the rest of the war, and it's now residing here at the Biggin Hill Heritage Hangar. So Mark's gone off to the end of the runway. He's got some engine checks to do. He'll be testing that the propeller's working, the oil pressure's good, testing the magnetos, and then he'll be making sure that everything is fit for his display. As I said, we have got some cameras fitted to the aircraft, and I'm hoping that the people at home watching will be able to get to see. Here we go, there you go. Look on the screen. We can see that Mark's camera over his shoulder is showing us live what he's doing for those as he taxis out towards the end of the runway.
So, of course, the airspace here at Biggin Hill is cleared for the display, so he will have his routine in his head. He'll be having the same considerations, regardless of the aircraft type, that the other pilots have had today, which is thinking about the wind, thinking about the airspace above, thinking about the limitations for his height and his distance away from the crowd. He's just completing his engine checks, and we'll see him get airborne very shortly.
He's just closed the canopy. When he runs it up to 1800 RPM for his engine checks, it gets quite warm. So he's just shut the canopy, and he's getting ready to wind the engine up. He'll check the magnetos, and then he'll be changing the pitch of the propeller to get the oil flowing through, and then running it up ready for takeoff. What do we know about the Spirit of Kent then, John?
Well, what I do know is there's a brewery not far from here called the Western Brewery, and they have a beer, an ale called the Spirit of Kent, named after TA-805, a Mark 9 Spitfire. Now, this aircraft was the first aircraft in the collection, in the business of the Biggin Hill Heritage Hangar. It came here in 2011 and was restored by Peter Monk, who owns the business, and he himself still flies this aircraft and used to display it at many air shows around the UK, and that was the first of many. In fact, he's got so many Spitfires here now, he's got a squadron.
It is a great squadron as well. Lots of two-seaters. They've been really busy this morning, giving people flights of a lifetime. And I'm very fortunate I get to do the same at Sywell, where the Blades are based, where I work full-time. I hop across the fence and fly the grey Spitfire, giving passenger experience flights. Now, flying passengers with the Blades is great because everyone reacts differently. But flying them in the Spitfire is 100% magical. It's just, it induces so much emotion in people, and that's what all these lucky people here at Biggin Hill that have been in the back of these two-seat Spitfires have experienced this morning.
Of course. Now, of course, yes, you talk about the back-seaters, but how about the front-seater, Lingy? You obviously had to go through some training to become competent on type. Tell us a bit about that, about the conversion training and your feelings and views when you took that aircraft on your own for the first time solo.
Well, you've already spoken about tailwheel aircraft. Now, as a Royal Air Force pilot, you don't generally fly tailwheel aircraft. So the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, who operate the fighters, have Chipmunks, and then they actually lease T6 Harvard to train in. Because I'd been in the Blades and I've been flying tailwheel aircraft, the extra 300, I had 300-odd hours of tailwheel experience. So Richard Grace, who owns the Spitfire that I fly, was very trusting and just let me go straight into the Spitfire.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, this is an aircraft that has got a lot of power. It's got a V12 engine. The first Spitfires and Hurricanes only had 1,000 horsepower. There were 24 marks or 24 variants of Spitfire produced, and it was the only aircraft, or indeed British aircraft, that was in continuous production and evolution through the war. And the Merlin engine evolved into the Griffin, producing 2,300 horsepower, so more than double within 6 years. An incredible achievement, and it just goes to show the incredible design of R.J. Mitchell and how it could just be evolved over such a long period of time.
It is an impressive aircraft, and as you've already said, it just symbolises freedom, and I think that's what everyone really admires about the aircraft, and it's always very popular. The sound of that Merlin when you hear it flying past, it always gets my hairs on end, and when you've got 4 of them with a Lancaster, it's even better. So I'm looking forward to hearing this wonderful Merlin over the skies of Biggin Hill again this afternoon. I'm just trying to see if we've got live. We have got live cockpit footage going on ahead, and I can hear him opening the throttle. Now going to +6 boost. So boost being the measure of power coming from the engine at full RPM. So he's gone to +6 boost, nowhere near the power settings that they would have used during wartime. So trying to preserve these engines as Mark gets airborne off runway 03. The undercarriage coming up. It's quite difficult in the Spitfire to raise the undercarriage. You've got to take your hand off the control column to operate the undercarriage lever, which sits on the right-hand side. So you swap hands after going to setting the power for takeoff. You swap hands, so you hold the control column with your left hand, reach out to the undercarriage lever, operate the undercarriage lever, and then switch back to your right hand on the control column, left hand on the throttle. And there's some wonderful footage from Mark. Got the cannons on the wing of this Mark 9 Spitfire, so on the left of the screen there you can see the cannon sitting forward. Now back in the Battle of Britain, the aircraft didn't have cannon, they just had machine guns. So the cannons were fitted later on in the later variants and gave considerably more firepower. What the pilots were finding was that when they were fighting the Luftwaffe aircraft, they would have some good hits with the machine guns, but it wasn't just doing enough damage. So they ended up fitting cannon, and it really did increase the firepower of the Spitfire.
And just a little bit about the life of a Spitfire or Hurricane fighter pilot here at Biggin Hill, or indeed any of the other Battle of Britain stations. You know, they talk about abject tiredness. They talk about anxiety. They talk about having not to make close friendships in case they might lose a friend the following day. 7 miles south of Biggin Hill in Braested Village is the White Hart. I've drunk there, so have you, Lingy. You know, this is where they would go and unwind in the evenings.
Here we go. We're going to come. I'm going to interrupt you, John, as we get ready for what we call a crowd right to left topside pass. Mark flew in here with the Mark 9 Spitfire, the Spirit of Kent. Feels wrong to interrupt the sound of that beautiful Merlin.
So coming back round on the 45 to show us a bottom side pass of the aircraft. Now you might just spot on the underside a radiator, and that is where the oil and coolant would be cooled through the use of the ram air airflow passing underneath the wings. And Lingy, that's something you have to keep a real eye on, isn't it? The temperatures and pressures of this engine and the coolant.
It is. They do get very hot, working to around 110 degrees, 115 degrees as a maximum as you're operating on the ground. So if you've seen the film The Battle of Britain, where he says either we take off or we blow up, he actually wasn't joking. If they are held on the ground for too long, then the coolant temperature shoots up, and then you have to shut down to prevent overheating and then causing damage.
And what sort of power setting, Lingy, will he be flying at this point? You talked about conserving the engine, but he also needs enough power to actually conduct the display.
He's probably using around +6 boost, 2,650 RPM, I imagine, which is about the sort of maximum power you'd want to use in this sort of environment. Of course, in the wartime, they would go to whatever boost they needed to get the job done. And but then they were changing engines as quickly as you like, as often as you like. Whereas with these now very precious warbird aircraft, they're trying to prolong the life of the engines as long as possible.
Well, you saw a classic victory roll there, and then Mark was positioning over Biggin Hill Valley in a wing over right to reposition for the next manoeuvre.
Bottom side pass with a bit of top rudder. So Mark's keeping the nose up by using a bit of rudder to stop the nose from falling, as he showed us that beautiful silhouette, that elliptical wing form of the Amazing Spitfire.
Now, talking about wing shape and wing design, of course, the Hawker Hurricane was the Royal Air Force's first monoplane fighter, and actually derivative of the Royal Air Force's last biplane fighter, the Hawker Fury. And that had a very thick wing, so it could outturn the ME-109s. But then, of course, the Spitfire came along with this classic elliptical wing. So tell us a bit about that wing, Lingy.
I'm just going to listen to the sound of this Merlin first. Absolutely beautiful. So the elliptical wing, the idea is that the shape of the wing reduces what we call lift-dependent drag, which makes it more efficient. So that's why you see that shape of wing. It's actually a very thin profile wing, which gave a number of challenges in the design of the aircraft, specifically the undercarriage. Trying to get the undercarriage to sit within the wing. And of course, you had all your ammunition and machine guns and cannon as well.
And it was quite a narrow track undercarriage, so I would have thought quite a challenge on gusty days in comparison to the Hurricane, which had quite a wide track undercarriage.
Little pub quiz fact for you. The gentleman who designed folding buggy. So the McLaren folding buggy, Owen McLaren designed the undercarriage for the Spitfire, and in later life in the 60s designed the McLaren folding buggy. So if you've had your kids in a McLaren buggy, he was the chap who also designed the undercarriage of a Spitfire.
Now, of course, growing up, I remember watching the wonderful displays of the late, great Ray Hanna in MH434, another Mark 9 Spitfire, where he used to use this airfield as an amphitheatre. Absolutely wonderful displays. And do you know what? We're seeing a really good quality display here today, aren't we? Absolutely wonderful.
It is a fabulous display. Mark's putting that aircraft through its paces. He's a very experienced pilot himself. He was actually a part of the Battle of Britain Memorial flight, flying their Hurricanes and Spitfires while he was the station commander at RAF Coningsby. He's a former Jaguar and Typhoon pilot, and he's now flying here at the Heritage Hangar doing displays and passenger experience rides.
Now, the Royal Air Force has its own collection of vintage Royal Air Force aircraft. Of course, the Battle of Britain Memorial flight. I know you've been around that hangar a lot of times, Lingy. What's the feeling when you walk in the hangar?
It's such a precious place. They've got one of the two only airworthy surviving Lancasters in the world, plus the Dakota, 2 Chipmunks, and I think it's now 5 Spitfires and 2 Hurricanes. So a beautiful, beautiful, in fact, it's 6 Spitfires. And it's a beautiful place to visit, and the heritage there is always fantastic. And what's always brilliant when you go to visit, which is actually now an open museum, you can actually have tours of the Battle of Britain Memorial flight, is the number of veterans that visit the place. And quite often when I've visited, we've been lucky enough to meet the veterans and actually speak to them about their experiences.
Absolutely. Well, do you know, you talk about veterans and the honour and the privilege of talking to these chaps. Now, a couple of weeks ago, here at the Biggin Hill Heritage Hangar, they had their Veterans Day, dwindling in number, and it just goes to emphasise the importance, does it not, of keeping alive our history through the Biggin Hill Memorial, Big Battle of Britain Memorial flight, but also the Heritage Hangar here at Biggin Hill. So you can obviously go and visit, as Lingy says. You can come here to Biggin Hill and you can book your flight if you wish, and experience the thrill that we've been watching today of a Spitfire over the fields of Kent.
Oh, we're seeing on screen now, Mark has slowed down to below about 135 miles an hour, which is the undercarriage limiting speed. He's put the gear down. You can see the wheels are now extended. He's also put the flap down, and he's on the left-hand final turn for runway 03. You see the flaps there. As we start seeing the front profile of the aircraft, the flaps are lowered, and he'll be touching down on runway 03. What a fabulous display from Mark. That's just so spine-tingling to watch, and always brilliant to see a Spitfire displaying at Biggin Hill,
and
where they were, of course, so important.
You'll see him doing the classic curved approach, Lingy, because it's a very long nose on the Spitfire, and you don't have very good forward visibility. So, you know, one of the classic manoeuvres of the Spitfire to land is to make sure that you have sight of the runway at all times, and he's just bringing the aircraft down onto the runway now.
I'm glad they don't put live cameras on my face when I'm landing a Spitfire, because my face doesn't look as calm as collected as that. There'd be a lot more panic on my face. It's, as you say, it's a long nose with that 27-litre Merlin in front of you. It's a very difficult position to see over the nose and get it in for landing. So actually, a few knots of crosswind is quite useful, so you get better view of the runway. Indeed. So there we go. Mark finishing up. He's probably just opened his canopy, giving himself a bit of fresh air after that brilliant performance, getting his engine back in. He's just put the flaps up, the flap lever's just moved, and he's putting the flaps up ready to taxi in. And we should see him come taxiing in past us here at the Heritage Hangar, and he's going to come and park up, I think, right next to us, which will be great to hear the noise as we do that.
Well, I think we've heard enough from you two for quite some time. We haven't heard you stop talking for the last 20 minutes. So I'm going to now go and meet a very special young girl. I'm going to have a look at some of the aircraft that we've got parked here. We've got our amazing Yak, our Dragon Rapide. Some of our audience that are joining here today. We've got our Air Cadets over in the corner, beavering away. So let me introduce you all to Annabelle Bickley, who is a very, very special young lady. So Annabelle was meant to go flying today on her first experience flight, but sadly, because Biggin Hill has been so busy, she hasn't been able to get airborne yet today. So this is Annabelle. Annabelle has got autism and ADHD and is soon to be flying with Aerobility for her first ever flights. And this is Steve, her instructor. So just want to say hello, Annabelle.
Hello.
So Annabelle, have you always been interested in aircraft?
Since I was very little.
And what's your favourite aeroplane?
This one.
This one? Excellent. Are you looking forward to going flying with Aerobility? Are you going to fly from Blackbush, is that right?
I think so. Okay.
And is this going to be your instructor? Excellent. So Steve, you've helped Annabelle get into the seat and adjusted it for her. So what have you had to do so that Annabelle can reach the pedals?
Well, we've had to take the seat forward just a little bit. Just pull forward like I showed you earlier. So you can now reach the pedals completely. And show me how you hold the controls. That's it. So what happens if we pull back?
Go up.
That's right. Do you want to show me? There you go.
You're going to be absolutely smashing at this, Annabelle. Okay, so who's your favourite pilot is an important question.
Mike Lynn.
Mike Ling? Well, I do think he is knocking around here somewhere. Oh, hang on, there he is. Right, I think he might have something for you.
Yep. This is Wilbur, isn't it? This is Wilbur the Bear.
This is Wilbur the Bear.
Thank you, Liz. This is Wilbur the Bear, and I've signed Wilbur's T-shirt for you, Annabelle, to say thank you for coming along to help with the Armchair Air Show, and I'm wishing you all the very best with your first flight when it gets to take place. Great to meet you.
I think she's going to make a better pilot than he ever was, that's for sure. And also the CAA ambassadors that we met earlier have left us a little goodie bag for you as well, Annabelle. So I'll hand that to you as well. And we look forward to seeing you at Blackbush whenever you eventually do get flying. So don't fly home tonight, all right? Wait until you get to Blackbush. All right, that's enough for outside. Right now, we'll throw back to George on the sofa.
Much, Liz, you guys been doing a great job out there, hot-footing it on a very dynamic basis. The challenges of running a hybrid show are absolutely enormous because we've got public visitors here today, we've got aircraft coming, and then we had an airspace issue, and it's all to do with the amount of traffic going in and out of Farnborough and going in and out of Biggin Hill. So we sadly had to drop a couple of air displays. We were hoping to get the Dragon Rapide up for you as well. But also one very, very special guest we would have had today had we not had these issues was Richard Goodwin. You well know him being associated with the Muscle biplane. But of course he always stretches the envelope, wishes to do better, wants to try harder. And together with his partner Savio has brought together the J-Pit, his own jet pit development. I had the pleasure last year of going up to interview him at Gloucester where he was developing this. So this is already a powerful, heavily modified aircraft, not like any other Pitts aircraft that you've seen, certainly not in this country. Not only has it got the uprated engine, the uprated ailerons, the uprated wings, the strength and so on and so forth, but he's now adding two very small jet turbines to each side of the fuselage. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick look at some video that he sent us literally just an hour ago. Well, I think you're going to agree that's going to be a pretty dynamic display this year. And if you haven't seen him, then do please go somewhere where you can, because of course the other thing he does is chase racing cars down a runway at the same time as well, while he's doing a knife edge pass at about 10 feet above the surface. All perfectly approved and of course heavily well practiced as well. So an extraordinary man, Richard Goodwin, with JPIT and a muscle biplane, all the usual stuff coming. But just a pause now and a reminder, as I say, we've seen, hopefully you've been having a great afternoon watching us, dipping in and out, I know that you will be, but a reminder of what we're trying to achieve today, which is to raise money to keep this wonderful charity going and all the inspirational work that it does. Take a look now at the work of Aerobility.
Welcome to Aerobility. For nearly 30 years, we've been providing access to the magic and wonder of flight to anyone with any disability. Up to 1,000 individuals take to the skies with us every year, 30% of which are wounded, injured or sick, armed forces veterans. We don't just teach people to fly, we change people's perspective on the world and their capabilities forever.
The one thing that's fantastic about Aerobility is the way that there is no difference between people who are disabled and those that are non-disabled.
They gave me that purpose back, they gave me that sense of worth again, and for that I'm forever thankful.
Thanks to the support from the Department for Transport, Aerobites and all our supporters, 100% of every pound you donate today will go directly toward funding disabled flying. Please visit armchairairshow.com to make your donation. Together with your support, we can make such a difference through the magic of flight. Thank you.
I am happier.
I am more confident.
I am feeling positive about my life.
Thanks to Aerobility.
And thank you to you.
Let's have a look at Dawn to Dusk.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fantastic competition, and it's kind of what you're here to talk about. So give us a little bit of the history, because you also sent this picture over. What's the story behind that then?
So the Dawn to Dusk competition came about between a conversation with Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, and Norman Jones, who was the chairman of the Tiger Club back in the time. So we must be talking 1963. Somewhere around that time. And the first competition was in 1964. And it was very, very simple. You had to take off from Red Hill. You had to arrive back at Red Hill. You had to fly a turbulent, which is why that picture was included. And you had to see how far you could get in the hours between dawn and dusk. So they did this for the first 3 years, and this is all going terribly well. And then somebody landed very late into Red Hill. And never taxied in. So they sent the fire truck out to see what was going on, and they got to the aircraft, and there was a guy asleep at the controls. And the guy said to him, what do you last remember? And he said, well, I remember being on final. And they thought, right, okay, this could go very wrong when people are going to push themselves to this limit. So they changed the rules, and so we have the modern set of rules, which are fairly unchanged ever since. So the idea is you take your aircraft, whatever that is, and it could be anything. We've had everything, obviously, from fixed wing to rotary. We've had gliders. Gyros. We even had a guy during COVID do it in his flight simulator, which wasn't technically a proper entry, but bravo to him for giving it a go. And you pick a theme, so pick something that you enjoy, something that you're passionate about. We've had people pick Spitfire RAF stations or things connected to Spitfires. Vulcans. It could be something historical. It could be flying around the coast of the UK. Anything, and it's not a UK competition, as it said in that little picture. It's an international competition. So for those international viewers tuning in, especially your friend from who you met in Freedom Star from Poland, anybody can join in. And last year we had entries in from Spain, from Australia, as well as from the UK. We've had New Zealand, Canada, and the US, etc., Germany. So yeah, anybody from any country can join. I think that's sort of a very basic brief.
And you kind of, when you exit.
Well, it's terrific to have Sebastian joining the show again this year. Pool is just phenomenal supporters of certainly a lot of general aviation and key members and partners with Aerobility. And a reminder for you to have a look at go to armchairairshow.com and make sure you check out the auction and sign up. You know, try and bid for one of those things. The chance of going flying with Nigel Lamb, quite an exceptional opportunity. But all those things, even if it's just the socks that you're interested. But right now, one of the busiest members of our teams throughout the last couple of months has been Liz, and she's got yet another feature up her sleeve. Liz.
Well, I'm now joined on the sofa by Travis Ludlow, who we met earlier, who's one of the Department of Transport ambassadors, and Catherine Dudella as well, who is a really, really interesting individual we'll hear from in a second. But first of all, to Travis. So we're about to watch some VT of Travis, who is a world record holder for being the youngest pilot to circumnavigate the world, youngest male to circumnavigate the world solo. And Travis very kindly has brought with him an item for the auction today. Travis, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've actually brought with me my sunglasses, which I wore during my around the world trip, and these are just some incredible sunglasses that they've traveled the world. I mean, if there was a camera on these sunglasses that was recording and you could see the footage, you'd see everything. So these are just some amazing sunglasses, and yeah, I think someone will enjoy them a lot.
Do you know what, Travis, it's funny you saying that, because I remember in my flying career always wishing that I could snapshot everything I seen with my eyes and send it back to my mum so she could see it. So yeah, what a great item, guys, to get bidding on those sunglasses. I asked Travis to model them, but he said, no, not today. So on to Catherine. So Catherine, you are the youngest examiner in the UK, or is it youngest instructor in the UK, is that right?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Your microphone's just gone out of battery, so you're going to have to swap. If you give me that one. There you go. You go with that one.
So yeah, I'm the youngest instructor in the UK and the youngest examiner in the world.
That is absolutely phenomenal. And how old are you?
21.
Wow. And when did you become an instructor? What age?
So I became an instructor in 2019 when I was 19, and then became an examiner last year when I was 21.
And have you examined Travis on any?
Well, you know what? We've actually just been flying earlier on today to get his SCP back, SCP rating back.
And did he pass?
Well, the test is tomorrow.
Okay,
so he is going to make me proud tomorrow.
Oh, excellent. So what inspired you to get into flying then?
So when I was quite young, I think my dad used to take me to this airport locally where we used to live. And, there used to be lots and lots of commercial planes, private planes flying about. And I saw this A380 land there one day. And I'm like, that's it. How does that stay in the air?
Yeah.
And ever since, that's, the aviation bug just came in, and it's like, that's it. I want to fly one of those.
Oh, wow. Well, clearly you've done it, and done it like absolutely amazingly, so well done.
Absolutely,
well done.
And that's the point, is to be there, but also to actually help others be there.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it, to continue that journey and pass on your knowledge to others.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us in the sofa today.
You're most welcome.
We're about to hear more from Travis, who I interviewed earlier this week. I'm joined now by two absolutely amazing young individuals. They're both half my age, and they've done twice as much in their lifetime than I have ever or will ever achieve. I'm joined by Zara Rutherford and Travis Ludlow, who have both circumnavigated the world in their airplanes solo and are world record holders because of it. Good afternoon, guys. How are you both doing?
Hello.
Hello. Good to talk to you.
So I guess we'll start at the start and ask how you guys get into flying. So let's go to you first, Travis. What sort of first got you into the flying bug?
Yeah, well, I've always loved flying, and my family knew this. And so my godmother actually bought me a trial gliding flight on my 12th birthday. From there, I was just hooked, and I just loved it. I was flying as much as I can. I eventually flew solo in the glider on my 14th birthday, and continued on from there, where I completed my PPL and my instrument rating when I was 17. Just had a blast from there. The rest is history.
Wow. And what about you, Zara? How did you come from an aviation family? How did you get into aviation?
I did, yeah. So my parents are pilots, so I'm really lucky to have them. And I just, when they were flying, I thought, that is so cool, I want to do it too. started training for my microlight license when I was 15 and decided I was going to fly around the world at 18.
Wow. And was it your parents that encouraged and inspired you to plan your trip, or was it that you just decided to be a trailblazer yourself?
So I kind of told them, I phoned my dad up. I was at school at the time. And I said, hey, I think I want to fly around the world. And he was pretty excited. When I told my mom, I waited a few days to tell my mom. When I told her, she wasn't quite as excited. But then once I got the plane and the route, I was able to convince her that it was pretty safe and there wasn't too much to worry about.
And what about you, Travis? What inspired you to set off on your trip?
Yeah, well, I come from a non-aviation background. No one in my family flies. But I used to just have a pile of magazines next to my bed, and just about aviation. And eventually I read a book called Wings Around the World by Polly Vatcher. And she flew around the world quite a few years ago. That's what gave me the idea. I told my parents years ago about what I wanted to do. I wanted to fly around the world. And originally they just went, yeah, right. Eventually, after all these things I was doing with flying, going solo on my 14th birthday and getting my PPL, they started taking notice, and they eventually came on board. But it took a lot of convincing my mum as well. So just like Zara, we had our mums definitely cared a lot about us.
You were originally meant to fly back in 2020, is that right? And then COVID struck. Just tell us about what happened with the delay and how you went about planning your trip.
Yeah, so the original plan was actually for me to fly around the world in 2020 at the age of 17 and beat the world record by over a year, and beating it at 17 years old. But of course, COVID got in the way, which did alter my plans. But really, it was actually more of a blessing than a curse, as it allowed me to get a lot more flying experience, a much better aircraft, and allowed me to meet loads more people and get loads more connections to make this this trip a reality. So it definitely helped me out a lot.
Amazing. And Zara, I saw some of your footage, and there is a picture of you flying over an extremely dark red desert that just ends at one point.
Yeah, that's probably the best video I took. That was over the Saudi Arabian desert. It was incredible. I was actually trying to spot the camels from the air. So how we have, farms with cows, they have farms with hundreds of camels, which I thought was really cool and just gorgeous. And it changed so much. So south, it's like sand dunes, and further north, it looks a lot more like Jordan. So it's like rock formations, and it's in those kinds of places where they'll film Star Wars and, Dune, for example. So that was really cool.
When you were on the ground, where was your favorite place that you got to stay and be hosted, Travis?
Probably my favorite place to be hosted is actually a place in Manili in Russia, and it's it was a completely unplanned part of the trip. It's a tiny settlement. There's no roads. The only way to get there is by helicopter, and no one spoke a word of English. And they were just so nice. They donated me some fish and a loaf of bread, and that was my dinner for the night. And just absolutely incredible to stay there. So yeah, Russia is definitely one of my favorite places to have visited.
Wow, I bet you've had some really, really strange meals on your travels. What about you, Zara? What's the strangest meal that you've had on your travels?
Actually, funnily enough, I can relate to Travis so much on this. I landed in Ayan, same thing, only accessible by air, small community, almost nobody spoke English, and I also received fish and a loaf of bread, which was pretty funny. Yeah, otherwise, the weirdest meals, I got moose in Alaska, and I was offered whale blubber, but that didn't happen in the end.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be my cup of tea at all. And I'm guessing you must have both had some scary moments on your travels around the world. So, Zara, anything that sticks in your mind is one of the scarier moments?
I was quite lucky. I never had a moment when I genuinely sort of felt afraid. I did get a little bit too close to thunderstorms at some points. And otherwise, as I was flying into South Korea and I was trying to avoid North Korean airspace, I had the impression there was a line of cloud that was going to cut me off. And I was flying VFR, so I can't fly into cloud. And I had to briefly consider whether I should fly into North Korean airspace. But that was a pretty quick no.
Yeah, that's a quick decision you had to make at that point, I'm sure. And what about you, Travis? You must have had thunderstorms to avoid as well, but anything else that sticks in your mind as being particularly scary?
Yeah, well, so I had an instrument rating, so I could fly into IMC, but I definitely had actually some really heart-pounding moments. The biggest lesson I learned really from the around the world trip is to not fly over the Rocky Mountains in the middle of the night. I was flying along over the Montana Rockies, and I noticed my airspeed was beginning to drop, and I turned off the autopilot and grabbed control of the yoke, and I was having to maintain my altitude in order to keep the nose up in order to maintain my altitude. And eventually I was forced to descend, otherwise the plane would have stalled. And I actually dropped about 2,000 feet in 30 seconds. But as a pilot, you're taught to aviate, navigate, communicate. So I turned around, I flew in the opposite direction, and was radar vectored out of there. And this was all at 1 a.m. at night over the Rockies, pitch black. So it was terrifying, but an amazing experience, and it definitely and that was a mountain wave I flew through, and so definitely not something you want to fly through in a Cessna 172.
Well, it's obviously you're both laughing as you're telling these stories, so they haven't put you off. So I guess what's next? Have you got any plans, Travis, for another adventure coming up?
Yeah, well, I love electric aircraft. I love sustainable aircraft, whether it is electricity or hydrogen. And my dream is to go to a university and study something like aerospace engineering, something like that, and become involved in some sort of electric aircraft, sustainable aircraft development program, or be a test pilot or an ambassador for whatever company. And my dream is to eventually one day fly around the world and break the world record with the first person to fly around the world in a fully electric or sustainable aircraft. It could be electric, it could be hydrogen.
Oh, what a dream and what a vision to have. And when you do, you'll have to come and tell us all about it. And Zara, I believe your little brother has set off in his travels as well, and he's trying to do a similar challenge.
He has, yeah. So he right now is in Kenya, and he's doing great. He's doing great, and he's really enjoying it. So I'm really happy that he's got that opportunity as well. That the sponsors helping him out as well is just really special.
Well, he's had an absolutely awesome big sister to inspire him, hasn't he? And hopefully give him some advice on his travels and in his planning. Guys, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you both this evening. This afternoon. You've been absolutely amazing and absolutely inspirational to so many of our viewers. We've got gliders at Blackbush at Aerobility, so you'll have to come along someday and have a go and meet some of our flyers as well and inspire them in person. But thank you. It's been absolutely wonderful chatting to you both, and fly safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Well, how wonderful to see such inspiring young people involved. We all need a succession plan in life, and actually looking at those two, I think the future is pretty secure. It's fantastic news. And their involvement with Aerobility, icing on the cake as well. And just a reminder, that is what we're all trying to achieve today, is raise more funds for this amazing charity. And when we can do that, we can all do our very best. We're surrounded by some interesting artifacts here that I think you can also bid for as well. They're supplied by Aerotex, and they will also be available amongst many, many other prizes. Don't forget also the number to text to 70490. You can just put fly plus a number. The bigger the number, the better, and that will get some money donated to our charity. But it's time also for us to have a bit of a break. You probably appreciate it in this hybrid dynamic environment today. Things have gone a little bit differently, but we've just sort of calmed it down a bit, and we've all got a few other things we want to share with you. Over on the right-hand side here, Lingy is just about, I think it's his turn, on the Top Gun Monopoly board. Go ahead, Lingy.
I've got to get out of jail. Now, Liz and John and I went and saw Top Gun Maverick last night and very much enjoyed it. So Liz has brought in the Top Gun Monopoly game, which I think at the end of the show we're going to put on the auction.
We are going to put on the auction. And which piece did you steal, Lingy?
I'm in the fighter jet, so I'm in the F-14 and I've got 6.
Yes, what a surprise.
I've just got Viper.
I swear he's been cheating every time we've been outside. Yeah, we are going to put that up for auction at the end of the show, and we're all going to sign the back of it as well. Yep. So that'll be really, really worthwhile someone bidding on.
Fantastic. No spoilers allowed because I haven't seen it yet. These have, okay? I'm gunning for it. Now, you've got a bit of a teddy bear fetish, Liz. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I did actually have 2 teddy bears with me today, but Lingy stole one and gave it to the lovely Annabelle, who was very more deserving of it than me. But yeah, I've got my little Biggin Hill bear, and somebody at Aerobility thought it would be really, really funny to send me in a Red Arrows groupie patch, which hasn't made it onto a flying suit of mine. And Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can probably give that away at the end of the show as well.
No, you can't.
Now, I brought something very different along. This was in my hangar yesterday morning. I'd completely forgotten about it, and the owner of the aircraft that I was flying didn't forget about it and reminded me to pick it up. We're all used to seeing these flags on airplanes, and we know pretty much how important they are, the blanks and bungs that go in it. This one, however, is very different. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on what you think it should have fitted inside and what particular aircraft it came from. You can go online and offer some comments right away. John, you've got something interesting with you today as well.
I do, George, yes. So in 2005, I was fortunate enough to go out to Moscow and visit the Zhukovsky Air Base, where the Gromov Flight Research Institute is based. And I had the privilege of taking a backseat ride in a MiG-29. Now, the pilot was a test pilot, and those guys only wear the Mikoyan patch if they're a test pilot. And as a passenger, I was given this patch. I've not worn it on my flying suit because I think it'll get a bit dirty, but that stays at home, and it's taking pride of place, actually.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a couple of minutes to spare. We also thought it'd be a bit of fun to recount some of our own personal aviation history, maybe stumbling along the way. From my point of view, very often it's what's not in your logbook which is most interesting. But Lingy's got a pretty hefty weight number of logbooks, and one particularly thick one. Lingy, bring us some memorable moments from your own logbook.
I've got my 3 RAF logbooks all bound together into one here. So there are some incredible memories. There's something I love doing is just flicking through my logbook and just remembering some of the brilliant things I've been able to do as a pilot in the Royal Air Force, not just in the Red Arrows, but when I was an instructor on the Tucano, flying the Tornado F3. But there's one particular memory, so I turn to this page, which it would be silly of me not to talk about, which was in 2009. I'll just show that to the camera there. So 2009. June the 27th, 2009, and it says XX237 display Biggin Hill. Now, I grew up in Biggin Hill. I'm from Biggin Hill. I watched the Red Arrows display here every year from when I was 1 year old. And in May 1982, when I was 3, I told my mother I wanted to be a Red Arrows pilot. So June the 27th, 2009 is when my absolute schoolboy dream came true, and I got to display here above this fabulous airfield.
Fantastic. What a story. That's going to be tough to cap that one. Liz, have a go.
Yeah, no, I don't think I can top that one, actually. But I have to admit, you know, I've been looking at all of your logbooks as we brought them on today onto the set, and I realised that mine is a little bit tatty around the edges. Both of them are, yeah. Could have looked after them better. But actually, it turns out it's because they've been to war a couple of times. So every time I deployed on Op-Eric, these logbooks would come with me. So I just flicked through them and managed to find one page, which was pretty much from the start all the way to the end. Op-Eric tasking, Op-Eric tasking, Op-Eric tasking. But one of the important things that stands out in my logbook is the IRT task that we did in Op-Eric, which was where we did the flying ambulance. So we had the merch crew, and there was a crew on standby at 15 minutes notice to move during the day. And we had 4 medics down the back, including a doctor and an anaesthetist, and then 6 force protection guys that would then run off the back of the aircraft and provide all-round protection. So actually, although there's not one single standout moment in all of that, I'm really proud of the MERT being in there.
I bet you are. There's phenomenal stuff indeed. We could go on. We could run a whole show, I think, on the stories we have, particularly from operational flying around the world, but we're not going to do that. I've come up with something different. Right in front of me here is one of my 3 logbooks, and there's not much in it. And that is because after about 10 hours on a Bulldog and about 32 hours on a JP, I sort of went upside down and lost control of a JP. And luckily, I was with an instructor. But during the course of that, I suffered what was called a barotrauma. And that's a severe injury inside not just your ear, but the entire sort of tubes around your ear and your face as well. And you'll see in the logbook there is a big red stamp. And that was a memorable moment in my life because basically said, that's it, you're finished, no more flying for you. Well, youngsters out there, if you're listening to this, never give up, because there is always another way to, pull that string and get involved and pursue your passion. And I was delighted to say the Royal Air Force's loss, but it became the British Army's gain, that I then went on, and here I am 4,000 hours later. And I'll pause for a moment as one of the many business jets that we've had going in and out of here today, the memorable times and stories that I've had, literally by a stroke of luck, somebody suggesting to me, well, why don't you give the Army a call? And they said, well, we fly low and slow, we rarely go above 500 feet, and we certainly have no pressurized aircraft. Come on in. What about you, John?
I'll struggle topping that, but the patron of Aerobility is one Edwin Buzz Aldrin. And through a relationship through one of our Aerobility ambassadors, Brian Jones, who circumnavigated the globe in the Breitling Orbiter 3 balloon in the 1990s, has his gondola standing next to the Apollo 11 command module at the Smithsonian. We at Aerobility conducted a fundraising event in 2012, and we're looking for notable aviators to come and raise the profile of the charity. Buzz Aldrin turned up. He was a friend of Brian's. They got to know each other through the Smithsonian, and we established a relationship with Buzz, and he came to see us on a number of occasions. He visited us on the 17th of March 2015, and at that point we just got hold of our own Yak 52 for aerobatic flights. And I was the only one that was qualified to fly it. I had a flying suit and a couple of headsets, and I ended up flying Buzz in our Yak, and it was an incredible privilege. I did put the entry in my logbook. You might just see it there. And of course, when you're in the air, you have to get back on the ground again, and the landing can be some of the most dramatic parts of flying. So I was very conscious. I had the undercarriage down, I had the correct speed, and I was doing everything possible not to embarrass myself with a legend of humanity in the back seat. But it all worked out very well, and there it is in my logbook. So a real memorable day.
And luckily I remember that too. I only got the photograph. I didn't think of the signature, so well done you, John. It was great, but a really inspirational story. And you'll notice John had a slightly different logbook as well, and that is because he found a completely different route into aviation, and he's up there with the best now, displaying his Yak right out there in public domain. And you know, credit to all of it. Well, I don't want to include myself, but really, it's a tremendous thing to do. And our love of aviation, hopefully comes through to you today, and also our support for Aerobility. Talking of which, to help us with that, John, you've also been out and about, and I gather you've been to Northolt.
I have indeed, yes. So I was at RAF Northolt, and I met a chap by the name of Andy Robbins. Now, Andy is former Red Arrows, but after he left the Red Arrows team, he joined number 32, the Royal Squadron, and I caught up with Andy to learn a bit about what the squadron does, the aircraft he flew. But in this Jubilee year, in 5 days' time, we'll be seeing the Royal Air Force fly over Buckingham Palace, and Andy had some brilliant recollections of that. Take a look. Well, welcome to Royal Air Force Northolt in West London, just north of Heathrow Airport. In the Jubilee year, it makes sense for us to talk about the Royal Air Force's link to the Royal Family, of course 32, the Royal Squadron, a squadron that's been based here for many years at a place that has been in continuous operations since 1915. I'll be talking to Andy Robbins, a gentleman who flew this aeroplane behind me and who is also a former trustee of the charity. So tell us about your association with the charity. I can see the T-shirt you're wearing there.
Yes, very fortunate to have been invited, in fact by yourself, to join Aerobility and help out. And primarily that was when I was based here at Northolt. Having come from Scampton, I came to Northolt, and Blackbush was just down the road. And I was able to pop in and help out. This aircraft, I mean, it's a lovely aircraft. It looks right, it flies right. It is beautiful to fly as well. So it's an old cable and pulleys system, so there's no fly-by-wire, so it's solid. They just fly really well. It's not the age, it's the mileage. So these aircraft very much had that, as did the 146. And actually both aircraft types are very complementary. The 146 had short field capability, it carried a few more people, but the HS-125 was faster and basically better.
So we've come inside now to the beating heart of any Royal Air Force squadron. Of course, that's the crew room. And looking around, I can see, of course, the piano that you'll find on most squadrons in the Royal Air Force, tankards, old patches, dartboard behind me, lots of photographs. It really is a wonderful place to be. And Andy, it probably brings back a lot of memories for you.
Yes, it does. I mean, the crew room is sort of the beating heart of the squadron, as you said. Obviously, there's officers out back. We've got the tea bar just over there. And obviously when the weather's bad or we're waiting for various items, you know, it's a great place to congregate and chat. And we'll do discreet and informal ground crew training here or in the classrooms behind.
There's a photograph over your right shoulder, Andy. Tell us about that.
Yes, so this is a very good Aerobility connection. This picture here, which you may see, you can see the HS-125 at the top here, signed by, a print signed by Buzz Aldrin. And Buzz Aldrin is just here, and we were very fortunate, as part of Aerobility actually, we did that flight simulator challenge, Round the World challenge, and while we were chatting to him, I mean, he's got a really live mind, he was calculating the weight of the 125 and how much bigger engines we'd need to launch it into space, you know, off the top of his head. But he's an MIT graduate, he's like an astrophysicist, a very, very, very smart cookie.
If I could just take the conversation to the Royal Family, Jubilee year, and we're going to have the Royal Air Force represented on our screens next weekend for the fly past. I understand there's going to be over 70 aircraft for the Queen's birthday fly past in a Jubilee year. It's a big year for the Royal Air Force. Did you have the opportunity and the honour to overfly Buckingham Palace in your RF career?
Yes, I was very fortunate. Certainly, the Queen's birthday fly past is a really large aerial exercise in and of itself. And of course, you're involving things like Battlefleet Memorial flights, Spitfires, Hurricanes, and the Lancaster. You've got the Red Arrows normally at the back who are travelling fairly quick. You've got frontline aircraft, transport aircraft. You've got helicopters often at the front, and so that will take quite a lot of coordination because they're all flying different speeds. So that all the aircraft don't concertina up in the wrong place, but are exactly in the right spot as they go over Buckingham Palace balcony. But yeah, very fortunate as Red 10, sat in the back with Red 1, and you can see all the London landmarks, which is really rare to see because a lot of the London airspace is just no-go zones for fast jets. But there are special, very special, fortunate memories.
That's a special memory, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, thanks for a brilliant day. I've learnt a lot. Thank you for talking us through life on 32 Squadron in your time. We'll look forward to next Thursday, and Andy, I'm sure you'll have lots of happy memories as you see it on the TV, but for now, thanks very much for joining us on the Armchair Airshow.
Pleasure. Have a great airshow.
So he is a very familiar face to me, Andy Robbins, who, when I joined the Red Arrows in 2007, was in fact Red 10, and he's joined me here on the sofa. Hello, Andy.
Hello, Lingy. It's lovely to be here. Great to see so many people here at the Armchair Airshow. Fantastic day out for everybody, and a great chance for everybody to contribute towards Aerobility.
Brilliant. And you were talking there about flying over London in the Tornado, in the HS125, and in the back seat of Red 1.
Yes, very lucky indeed. I've flown, I think it's 3 Queen birthday fly pasts. So the first was as a junior pilot on the Tornado Squadron, on the wing of a Nimrod, and it felt like we were in cloud the whole way from Scotland down to London. I think we landed and refueled down at St Morgan to keep out the way. Then went back again in cloud, so it was a very tricky day out. Second time was on the wing of a C-17, so 2 HS125s when I was on the on 32 Squadron. That was the wing, and that was a lovely day out, really beautiful, great fun. And then the third time, I think, was in the back of, I think, either Jace Hawker or Diggy Pattonus, flying down the Mall.
It's always such a
treat. So
very
lucky to have done so many.
Now, normally you're not allowed to fly over central London. There's a big exclusion zone, and certainly in a single-engined aircraft like the Red Arrows, you have to get special permission to do it. So it is a real treat to do it. I've been very fortunate. I think I've well into double figures for the number of times over Buckingham Palace, but it's always the same feeling, and you can see the number of people on the Mall. Now, what the viewers won't know is that actually the way you know that if someone's having a sneak peek down at what's happening on Buckingham Palace, that you just get a little wobble in the smoke because they're not looking at Red 1, they're not looking at the references, so they give that away.
Certainly a massive shock. Like, oh my God, I'm over the Mall, I can see Buck Palace. It's terrifying. Actually, one of the loveliest times I was at the QBF was on the ground. I was in St James's Park for the Royal Air Force's 100th anniversary fly past. What was really lovely was hearing the applause, hearing the crowds cheering, and being in amongst the crowds watching all our colleagues going over the top. It really was a lovely feeling to be in amongst it, on the crowds, on the ground. So very fortunate to have just been in the air and on the ground.
It was a great demonstration of support for the Royal Air Force. And in fact, I was Red 3 for the 2018 for that centenary fly past. And I remember coasting in East Anglia at Southwold. We went all the way, pretty much straight line to the Mall. And at every single road junction, there were scores and scores of cars and thousands of people at every single motorway junction. And then we got into the Mall and Hyde Park and just saw the number of people in and around London showing their support for the Royal Air Force. It was fantastic.
You were doing a lot of looking out, weren't you?
I was doing a little bit of looking out on that one, yes, I was indeed. Now, I've done a lot of flying over London in Red Jets. Andy's done it in Tornadoes and HS125s. We've got George here. Now, as an Army Air Corps pilot, have you ever flown over Buckingham Palace?
I have done one, believe it or not. I've done most things, usually once. Extraordinary, yeah. You haven't done it in a turboprop, a twin turboprop. So I was out in the Gulf with an Islander, a turbine Islander, filling the gap between what the rotaries couldn't do up front. I had an aircraft that could land on 300 to 400 yards of desert scrub, but climb to 10, 15,000 feet on a full IFR package and recover at any of the local international airports. So did very well. I was back really, really late from Golf 1, just in time, however, though, to be tagged on the very end of the Golf 1 parade, victory parade through London. And it was a tremendously exciting thing to do. And I can see the buzz you guys must get out of it, doing it regularly. The only thing was, being tail end Charlie, the turbulence was unbelievable. I mean, the weather wasn't great anyway, but at the back, you're doing your very best. I'm bumping all over the sky. Absolutely extraordinary, but great fun.
It's going to be a brilliant fly past for Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee this week. I was lucky, I was in the Diamond Jubilee and also the Golden Jubilee in Tucano. But back in the Golden Jubilee was, in fact, the last time I think the Red Arrows flew with a very special aeroplane. So in 2002, they were over Buckingham Palace in company with the wonderful Concorde. And George, I think you have been playing with the Concorde.
Indeed, yes. The real one. We sadly weren't airborne, but can you believe it's almost 20 years? October 2003 was the last flight of Concorde, and what a magnificent aircraft it was, way ahead of its time, an extraordinary development, and with British and indeed a little bit of help from the French as well, engineering right at the very, very forefront. Well, I had the chance to go along to the Brooklands Museum and join Steve Bohill-Smith, himself an ex-Concorde pilot on that fleet, to chat about what it was like to fly that aircraft and have a go at it myself. And we're going to take a little look now at what I managed to achieve on what was a pretty demanding platform. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Steve Bohill-Smith, flew for British Airways for 35 years. Part of my career I flew the Concorde. So this is Delta Golf. It's not a production aeroplane. It was used in the pre-production testing of the Concorde. You can see very pointed nose. The cockpit is some 30 feet in front of the nose wheel. So taxiing the aeroplane was quite unusual compared with, say, a Boeing or an Airbus. The nose goes up and down. You can see the join just in front of the Speedbird there, and we needed the nose to move because of the angle of attack on the approach. Touchdown speed usually about 165, 169 knots, so nearly 200 miles an hour. So it's a lot quicker for landing than the subsonic jets, which is something we had to get used to.
I've got to say I'm feeling some trepidation, Steve. Before we get going, just tell me, there must be a massive checklist with this. How long does it take just to prepare before departure?
We've got a very reduced checklist for the simulator. As a team, we've got a flight engineer and the captain and the first officer, and we work as a team. So the engineer reads the checklist before takeoff checklists or landing checklists, and then we make sure everything works. Looks as though we've got a light out on the number 3 afterburner. We'll check that once we get going. So we take the park brake off and we will start to move. So you're keeping it straight with your feet.
Ah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, got it.
And then we go 3, 2, 1, now. Whack those open, which is unusual.
And is this when I'd feel a kick in my back?
As the afterburners light, you'll get a pin in the back.
Okay.
There's the green light, so we can go. That's 100 knots.
Okay.
V1.
V1.
Rotate.
Rotate.
Quite a big rotation.
Yep.
Gear coming up. 17 degrees. And we're going to try and keep the 250 knots.
Nose and visor.
We'll put that up if you want.
Okay, so visor first.
Yep.
There we go. Travelling. After takeoff, checklist complete.
So there's the Tower Bridge.
Yeah, got it.
And on the other side is HMS Belfast.
I remember that.
So
it looks like we're taking a pretty unusual route this time then. This is the Bow Hill approach to 27 left at Heathrow. Okay.
Yeah. So
you sure we're going to get through that? Whoa, yes, this is pretty interesting.
Just about. Good, well up.
Ah, not bad for a first time. Well, that's thrilling.
And if you lower the nose now, we'll go, there's the palace there, so left 245.
Roger. And here we are on the left-hand side. Good afternoon, Your Majesty. Just passing Buckingham Palace. Marvellous.
Okay, so we'll put the ILS back on for you.
Okay.
So around a Concorde, you look right down the far end.
Okay.
Don't look down here, right at the far end. As the air gets trapped under the big delta wing, it's a ground effect, and that tends to push the nose forward. And then because we've got a significant downward thrust vector because of the attitude, but take the power off, that also pitches the nose forward.
Right.
So if you look right down the far end and just resist the nose pitching forward,
okay,
it'll just roll on.
165 on the clock.
100 feet.
Roger.
50, 30, 20, 15. That's it. You're down and lower the nose.
Lower the nose, Roger.
And then I'll select reverse for you.
Thank you.
And then you can put your feet up onto the brakes. And
hey, we're still alive.
Good.
Thank you, sir. That was epic. Well, I think you can appreciate I had a bit of fun doing that. It was an enormously rewarding experience. Many chums of mine in aviation say the bigger they get, the easier they are to fly, because you've got so much automation. What was really different about that was predominantly the speeds. Of course, for real, there's a lot of management going on with balancing the fuel right through the fuselage, and of course the fuselage itself expanding during the course of flight. But really, it's a case of, to get going, you ready to ram all the throttles forward, and you don't really touch them again until you want to land a couple of hours later. You can, of course, check that out for yourself by going to the Brooklands Museum website, but also you get the chance within the Aerobility auction to bid for an opportunity to do that yourself. So go online right away and do that. Now, before we move on, just a quick word for a few more sponsors that have been helping us out this afternoon to make this whole thing happen. And of course, Orient Aviation, very kind. Our friend Edwin, just across the grass here from the hangar we're in today, very helpful indeed, a keen supporter of Aerobility. I mentioned Sabio during the course of Richard Goodwin's video that he sent us. Really, really helpful, not just in terms of what they're doing in the digital world, but in the way they're so committed to supporting all STEM initiatives. And running the air displays that we've had here today, we've had Charles Sciera and his team from R5 Air Displays. Well, talking about simulation, not surprisingly, our busy Chinook chick, Liz, has been out and about again. And internally in Aerobility, there are now some new toys to play with as well. And she's going to have a chat with Harvey now about what they have been up to. Liz.
Thanks, George. Yeah, so this part of the show in my notes is entitled Harvey Sim Challenge. So I think the best person to tell you what he got up to is the man himself. Welcome, Harvey.
Cheers, it's good to be here again. So now it's time to talk once more about simulators and why we use them. I love simulators, it's a big reason why I'm single. But for Aerobility, simulators are so important because they allow flying to be conducted at an affordable rate. We don't need any time due to weather, and our pilots can train in there without an instructor and rehearsing drills and skills. Now, our new neighbours at Blackbush are Summit Aviation, and part of what they do is have an airline experience with a static Boeing 737 simulator. And the other day, I decided to pay them a visit with a very specific question. We've seen Concorde go through Tower Bridge. Can we make a 737 do aerobatics? Come, we're back in the 737, and we fixed it this time. I don't really know what I did, but if God didn't want us to push buttons, he wouldn't have made them so enticing. Right, we're coming into Blackbush Airport now. We're just getting the speed back, getting the aeroplane trimmed out of it. I've never flown a 737 in my life. But how hard can it be? It's just a bigger PA-28 with 2 engines. Cool, just maintaining the height now, coming onto the pappies. Just give it a shed load of that, get that out of the way. I feel very low, so we're going to add a bit of power in. So I assume it's the same with our airliners. On final approach, it's your throttle which controls your height, and your yoke which controls the speed, which I'm happier with now. We've got 130 knots, probably a bit slow, but we are on the pappies, which is good news. And yet again, we're to the right, so we're gonna try and sort that out. I bet the people of Yateley will be really happy about a 737 flying over. Right, we're too high now. So what I would say is the 737 isn't easy when your hands don't work, and when you're very little like I am. But it's a nice proper aeroplane to fly. We're too high on the glide slope now. Does this count as like a Ryanair application? I mean, I work for nothing if I'm honest. Right, we're on the pappies, coming in for finals. We're nearly fixed our error and coming over the trees, dropping power right back. I've just realised the mistake I've made, but that's okay. And we're down on the ground, reverse thrust goes in, full brake, because we want a good stopping distance. Cool. And Greta Thunberg won't be happy with that, but I definitely am. Oh, I haven't put the brakes on. Okay, we're all good. Right, proof that a 737 can do a leap. Theoretically. So, nose down, gaining speed, and then we're putting fully and centrally back. We are now over speed, but don't worry about that. Worrying gets you nowhere. The CAA will probably write you a nice letter if you did this in real life. Look at this, and we're going to end it with a little roll, and then we're all good. It's quite involved aerobatics and a Boeing, I think.
Not as easy as it looks. There you go.
Wow. Isn't it amazing that you can loop 737 and only our very own Harvey could have achieved that and actually given it a go. If he'd have been supervised and had a good crew with him, I'm sure she wouldn't have let him do it. But yeah, he managed to get away with it. Speaking of being left unsupervised, I'm finally on my own on the sofa. I sent Lingy off to get me a brew. And on that note, just looking through some of our wonderful auction items, there is a pasty and afternoon tea hamper up on there, which I wouldn't mind bidding on myself. And also various experiences of simulators I've been talking about, flying on Concorde simulator, flying at Blackbush with Aerobility on the simulator. So please go to armchairshow.com and have a little look. So did you know that NATS London City Airport is controlled by Swanwick Control Centre, which is on the south coast of England? Well, they're also the only UK airport to have a digital tower. So we're going to now take a look and have some virtual footage of us going to visit that tower.
Hello everybody, today we are here at NATS Swanwick Centre. Most of you will know that it's in this building where we control most of the aeroplanes that fly over the UK. But today we're going to show you something just a little bit different. We're inside the building now. I'm sure many of you know that there are two operations rooms here at Swanwick, London Area Control and London Terminal Control. But I wonder how many of you realise there's actually a third, London City Digital Tower. London City Airport was the first commercial UK airport to deploy this technology. So let's go and have a look inside. So we're now here with Laurie, one of the watch managers here at London City. So where are we, Laurie?
We're in the digital control room at Swanwick. So it's replaced the traditional tower back at London City. And we had an 18-metre 1980s build glass visual control room at City, and we've replaced that with a 50-metre mast topped with cameras that feed the image here for us to control from.
I mean, amazing in terms of technology, but how many cameras are there? How do they get the signal from London all the way down to just outside Southampton?
So it's all fibre connections, and we've got 14 cameras at the top of the mast with fixed viewpoints, and then 2 robot cameras called pan-tilt zoom cameras that we can move around kind of like binoculars, but for the digital age. And when the picture gets here, we display them on nice big screens. We've got one screen per camera, and we take the 360-degree view and compress it onto 225-degree screens. What that means is that everything's always in your peripheral vision, nothing happens behind us anymore.
Now, London City, of course, is the first commercial airport in the UK to deploy this technology. Pretty exciting, I think. How do you guys feel about it?
Yeah, it was really exciting when we were told that this was going to be happening. It's been a really interesting project, and it's really great to work here and see it fully operational. We're really proud of the system, and it's part of a wider expansion and redevelopment at the airport. London City's now got its full parallel taxiway, and that's why we're here, is to allow us to control that.
So what are the main differences between this digital environment and a conventional tower?
So the differences really are that we're looking at screens instead of windows. Fundamentally, the job is still the same. It's all about the controller's eyes looking for the aircraft. We just look at screens now.
And are there any other, there must be, improvements, enhancements in what you do here compared to what you were doing in a conventional tower?
So the system has some really nice features that can help you to do your job. One example that you can possibly see behind us now is that the radar labels are transposed onto the screen. That helps to narrow down the area you're looking in to visually acquire those aircraft. It also allows you to be much more heads up. You don't need to keep looking down at your radar screen. You can monitor the altitudes, rates of descent on your window display.
In a conventional tower, you can obviously hear what's going on the airfield. Can you hear what's going on here?
So yes, strangely enough, we can actually hear more of what's going on at the airfield than we could from the conventional tower. In a conventional tower, you're sitting behind triple glazing at London City, as it was. In this digital tower environment, there are 2 microphones on the exterior of the mast, and they give us a stereo sound input to the room.
Is it strange to sometimes see it raining in London, and when you go outside to go to your car at the end of a shift, it's glorious sunshine because we're 70 miles further south?
Yes, that wrapped up in these screens, you can get really immersed in the London weather. We have had it more than once where you get some strange looks as you walk out the room wrapped up in your jacket for the rainfall that doesn't exist.
Thanks, Laurie. That was great and a fascinating insight into the future of air traffic control. Personally, I found that really, really interesting, and I hope you did at home.
Interesting indeed. It's fascinating watching that video and just seeing the direction that technology is taking us. I would never have thought, even 10 years ago, you'd be controlling an airfield digitally when you're not even there. Amazing. Okay, well, Nats have been really great supporters of Aerobility. It's been 10 years, a great relationship. We have, in fact, 3 people from Nats on the board of trustees, and they continue to help us navigate as we grow as an organisation. Okay, well, coming up next is a really wonderful piece of video, and it's George to introduce it.
Yes, well, this is a very special moment for me in many ways. I've flown aircraft on wheels. I've even flown them on skis because I was very fortunate to be based in Canada for many, many years and experienced the harshness of an Arctic winter. But probably the most satisfying thing and in many ways the most romantic thing I've done in aviation was to actually fly a float plane. Yes, might look like a bird. Is it a plane? Is it a boat? It's a mixture of all sorts of things. Well, to help me explain what it's really like to fly a float plane, I'm delighted to welcome to the show, live from France, Hamish Mitchell. Hamish, how are you today?
I'm very warm, it's very sunny, and I'm enjoying the seaplane air show at Biscarrosse down in Aquitaine. It's just fabulous. It's the best thing that you can do with an airplane.
That is fantastic. Now, I've never actually been, despite you and I sharing the same passion for flying on water, I've never actually been to a float plane air show. So tell me, what sort of things are happening there? Is there a form of competition?
It's not competition. The French are very, very good at this sort of thing. They have a museum here, the Musée d'Aviation. We've had the Canadair flying boat picking up water and then dropping water on all the ducks on the lake in front of us. We're going to get a couple of French Rafales later. Hopefully a bit later, it might get very, very noisy. But there's about 14 or 15 seaplanes here. We've been doing baptêmes or introductory flights. And there are seaplanes from Italy, Switzerland, Poland, and I've brought G. Graham down from Scotland as well. So it's a very international meeting.
It looks absolutely fabulous. I'm going to put it in my diary for next year, Hamish. But just tell us a little bit about the operation that you run. And while you're talking about it, we're going to show a little bit of video as well.
Okay. I think I'm speaking very quietly here because it's windy. But we're at Loch Doon, which is near Creswick. And we run seaplanes as a ETO, a designated training organisation. We do seaplane racing, and we also do adventure flying. We get jumbo pilots, ATP pilots, you name it, private pilots, to come and they want to experience that freedom that seaplane flying gives. You turn up to the water, and it's up to you to work out what the wind is doing. You can go ashore or if it's suitable. And I mean, I would use the French have La Liberté. We have l'esprit de corps, is what I say. The spirit of Scotland. It's that freedom to go and do adventure flying like this. We have some amazing mountains and rocks, castles, grass airstrips, hotels. I'm over-including here, but it's very difficult to understate this.
Oh, I don't think you are, Hamish. It's just a wonderful thing to do. Now, the video we're showing today is coming courtesy of John Hunt. Thank you, John, known as the flying reporter. But Hamish, clearly, passion it comes with this. Did you go into aviation with the intent of being a seaplane pilot, or did you discover it in a different way?
I went into aviation, as a wee boy, as an 8-year-old that was sat in the cockpit of a Hunter, and that got me hooked. I tried to fly in the Air Force, but I didn't have the eyesight, so I went to do air traffic control. I had a fantastic time, and I'm now, 36 years later, I'm a controller with NAT. But I decided to do my PPL about 20 years ago, and from that, I flew a seaplane in Canada, and I thought, I want a part of that. So I came back and basically got something up and running in Scotland.
Oh, absolutely outstanding. Now, you've got a close relationship about Aerobility. Do you intend to take your operation a little bit further in its involvement with the charity?
Sorry, you got cut out. There's a French Elysee and a couple of jets just flew past.
Yeah.
So you just quickly repeat.
Yeah, it's just your association with Aerobility and the charitable work. Are you likely to be becoming more involved? Is there something else we can offer in the respect of the operation you're running?
Well, to be honest, I would like to try and see if we could establish a little centre of gravity up in Scotland. I work for NATS at Prestwick, and I know NATS supports Aerobility, and I think there's a lot of keen pilots at Prestwick. Perhaps we could get some link to Aerobility. We could help Aerobility that way. Flying for the disabled is very close to my heart. My father was a navigator during the war. And although he didn't see active service, he ended up quite disabled. And there was a flying school that he trained at in South Africa, 62nd Air School, I think. For a long time, they were specifically doing training for disabled. So that's what they interested. And then it's a logical progression, Aerobility from there. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, you were breaking up a little bit there. The audio is not particularly great, but it's partly because we can all see you're having a really super time down there in France. Absolutely no doubt about it. I've just got to ask you one thing. I mean, landing, it's a very, very different environment to fly in, and it must be tricky. What did you find was the most demanding aspect of training as a seaplane pilot?
I think the most demanding is putting yourself in situations that you haven't been in before. But it's doing the research. You're flying with an experienced person, first of all. And you go to a place, you should have done a little bit of research before and follow that sort of survey map, scope the area so you've got an idea of what you're getting into. I think you have to be flexible. You have to have a plan B and a plan C. Don't just assume that what you're planning is going to work. You need one or two get-outs. If the wind's too strong or if it changes direction, hold the flow. So it teaches you a lot of self-sufficiency. It teaches you a lot of common sense. It teaches you to respect the elements. That's probably the biggest take from it.
Hamish, well, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. We'll let you get back to having a good time with your favourite sport, which, of course, is all about seaplane flying. Thank you so much indeed. And, of course, keep connecting with the armchairairshow.com website and all the things available in the auction and get a chance to go flying with Hamish as well. Well, we're almost coming to our finale, and it's always a very special one, as you know. But just before we do that, a little reminder about the work that Aerobility does.
Welcome to Aerobility. For nearly 30 years, we've been providing access to the magic and wonder of flight to anyone with any disability. Up to 1,000 individuals take to the skies with us every year, 30% of which are wounded, injured or sick, armed forces veterans. We don't just teach people to fly, we change people's perspective on the world and their capabilities forever.
The one thing that's fantastic about Aerobility is the way that there is no difference between people who are disabled and those that are non-disabled.
They gave me that purpose back, they gave me that sense of worth again, and for that I'm forever thankful.
Thanks to the support from the Department for Transport, Aerobites and all our supporters, 100% of every pound you donate today will go directly toward funding disabled flying. Please visit armchairairshow.com to make your donation. Together with your support, we can make such a difference through the magic of flight. Thank you.
I am happier.
I am more confident.
I am feeling positive about my life.
Thanks to Aerobility.
And thank you to you.
Such a hard-hitting video, and you can see what this amazing charity does to change people's lives. And thank you for your support so far. Remember, you can still text to donate. 70490 is the number. Fly with an amount you want to donate up to £20. So Fly 20 will donate £20 towards that fundraising effort for Aerobility. Now we're getting towards the end of the show now, and as is customary, we're going to close with a firm favourite in the UK, and that is the Royal Air Force Aerobatic team. Now, earlier in the week, I was joined by a couple of members from behind the scenes, and I interviewed them while they're out on their exercise Springhawk, the Mediterranean training camp that takes part before they start their summer season. So let's watch the film. And as is typical at most air shows, we're going to have a crowd favourite to close the show this afternoon, and we're going to welcome the Royal Air Force Aerobatic team, the Red Arrows. We're going to go for a slightly different track this year. Rather than speak to the display pilots, we're going to find out about what happens behind the scenes, and I'm delighted to be joined by the new Red 10 Squadron Leader Graham Muscat and the Senior Engineering Officer, or SENGO, who is Squadron Leader Chris Phipps. Very good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Afternoon, Mike. Yeah, good, thanks.
Afternoon, Mike.
And you're in sunny Greece, I believe, at the moment.
Yeah, it's quite sunny. The temperature's gone up quite a lot in the last couple of days, so it's very nice.
The jets are behaving themselves as well, which is always a good thing.
That's the important thing. How many jets have you got out there?
So we've currently got 11 aircraft out here.
Brilliant. Right, I'm going to start off with you, if I can, Graham, or Muskie, as you're known to everybody.
Yep.
And you're the new Red 10. How's that going so far?
Yeah, it's really good, really interesting. Obviously, I've only been in the chair since January, officially taken over from Adam Collins in March. But yeah, as you're aware, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to get where we are, even now in the exercise. So a lot of hard work, a lot of learning, because I'm not a previous Red Arrow. So a lot of learning the shapes and what I'm looking for. Certainly, as you're aware, there's a team supervisor. You have to look out for safety and make sure that they're doing everything right. So trying to get comfortable and also debrief the pilots how they're doing and what they're doing. Trying to find the right language to use, because as I said, I've never flown it before. But it's interesting, really enjoyable. So yeah, so far so good.
And I guess actually you're saying about not having a Red Arrows background, that's probably quite good to have a fresh set of eyes to come in and see it from almost a different perspective.
I'd like to think so. Before this, I was a qualified flying instructor at Valley, flying on the T2. So I've got plenty of Hawk experience and plenty of analytical experience about what things I'm looking for. So hopefully, using the guidance that Adam gave me and speaking to the OC and speaking to the team leader, Red 1, Squadron Leader Tom Bold, I've learned the skills and learned for what I'm looking for. So hopefully I'm getting it right. So far, so good.
Brilliant. And what did you fly before you flew the Hawk T2, Muskie?
So I was on Tornado GR4, based with 9 Squadron and 13 Squadron at Marham. It was a good aircraft. I left to go and do other things. I didn't see it out of service, but it's a shame that she's no longer with us. But she was a great aircraft to fly.
And I take it you're looking forward to the challenges that the 2022 display season poses for the Red Arrows. How about your commentary? How's that coming on? I know most people think that Red 10 is simply the team commentator, but of course there are many, many roles behind. Tell us how your commentary prep's going and some of your other roles as Red 10.
Yeah, so the commentary, it's really important because that is the conduit, the way that you interact with the public. I've written it a couple of times. Clearly, I'm using advice from Andy Morton, our PR manager as well, to get our messages right. But ultimately, it's kind of just looking what the team are doing, try and put some narrative together, think about the key messages. But yes, I've written it about 4 or 5 times. I have a little video that the videographers that have given me on my iPad that I watch in my quieter times and just keep on running it through, try and make it as flawless as possible. But obviously, as you said, in between that, I'm also doing safety stuff in terms of making sure that our display sites are all safe. We can operate there within the regulations, and liaising with all the flying display directors to make sure our timings are right. As you're aware, we go all around the country, making sure that all the jigsaw puzzles are put together so that actually it becomes seamless and trying to take as much load as possible off the pilots who are actually flying.
Brilliant. Let's move over to Chris now. So, Chris, you are the Senior Engineering Officer at the Red Arrows, so that makes you the head blue as such. Can you just explain who the Red Arrows engineering team are?
Yeah, certainly. So I joined the team in January this year, so I've been on the team now for just over 5 months. So the engineering blues, as they're known as, The team, pretty much a mixture of Trade Group 1 engineering technicians, we've got safety equipment fitters, supply, armourers, avionics, mechanical technicians, all who form the engineering backbone to support the Reds in achieving its mission objectives. So we've got a team of about 100 engineers in total, the majority of which have all come from previous operational backgrounds, so they all bring their unique experiences from past experiences to the team, which is really great.
I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, is when they watch the Red Arrows display, you see those jets in the air putting on the performance. They don't understand that that's the sort of top of the pyramid, and actually supporting that top of the pyramid is the entire structure behind the rest of the unit, which is, as you say, 100 engineers plus all of the support staff.
Yeah, correct, Mike. Being an ENGO, so it would be wrong of me not to give you some statistics. So for every one flying hour, it takes approximately 26 workforce hours to generate that one flying hour. And in addition to that, we're not just dealing with the day-to-day rectification, there's a lot of planning which goes on throughout the winter line. So pulling all primary maintenances to leave us predominantly maintenance-free while we're out here so that we can just react to any unserviceabilities.
And when it comes to logistics, obviously it's a big machine to get around the UK and Europe this summer. Who sorts the logistics? Who would be in charge of arranging all of that?
So it's a combination of factors, really. So partly myself, our supply system within the Reds, and also that's coordinated by the Force Headquarters. So there's a lot of work that looks at statistically what we've used previously on previous Springhawks, previous display seasons, so that we can get an understanding of what common spares we're going to be using. So we can try and basically get a stockpile of stuff to help see us through. Obviously, that does present its own challenges. Hawk's a legacy platform now, nearly 40 years in service. So to generate some of those bits does present its own challenges sometimes.
Yeah, well, you're touching on a good point, and this is an oft-asked question, is what is the future of the Hawk? How, are the Red Arrows going to change aircraft? I'm asked all the time, when are the Red Arrows getting a new jet? What can you tell us? So
what I can tell you at the moment is out of service date, or OSD as we refer to it, is been set at 2030. So the platform, we will operate that until 2030. There's currently some discussions about future platforms, but nothing confirmed yet. But to allow us to safely achieve an out of service date of 2030, we need to generate a stockpile of aircraft. So we've currently got aircraft in storage. We've currently got a forward available fleet of 14 aircraft on the squadron. 3 of those are always in some form of deck maintenance. So what we will do, we'll swap out some of those aircraft as they start to approach their fatigue index backstop, their flying hours backstop, and we'll swap them out so that we've got aircraft to see us through to 2030.
It sounds very complicated, but there's obviously a very solid plan there to make that happen. I'm looking forward to seeing the wonderful jet carry on its service till 2030. Let's go back to Muskie. So 2022, I think the busiest display season since 2018. Talk us through what's coming up over the summer.
Yeah, you're right, Mike. So we are looking circa 60, 65 displays, approximately 10, 15 fly pasts. And as you said, the team hasn't done that since pre-COVID, 2018. So it's your usual favourites, Torbay, Bournemouth, React, Eastbourne, some big shows, some big crowds. Certainly React, I believe, is going to be one of the busiest, having not been taken place since before COVID. So exciting places. We've also got, actually, fingers crossed, once we get PDA, we've got Le Touquet in France on the way home, which will be our first public engagement. So really looking forward to that, as well as a potential overseas display in Denmark as well. So yeah, we are international. We're certainly doing some really good shows, but of course, hopefully, leading up the first week of the season is the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. So there's a lot of celebrations going along all around the country, which hopefully we can play a part and make that event just a little bit more special for everybody that's involved.
And quite literally fly the flag. I guess you're really looking forward to it. You mentioned PDA there. Can you just briefly explain to the viewers what PDA is, please, Muskie?
Yeah, right. So we've got PDA, which stands for Public Display Authority. So all the display teams throughout the Air Force, and actually probably worldwide, have to go through a process. And we are signed off by one of our senior officers. In our instance, it's actually Air Officer Commanding 1 Group. And he will come out and he will effectively inspect and a standard visit of the team. It includes all the engineering, all the paperwork, the ops, and how we operate as a squadron. As well as obviously he will supervise and the displays, make sure they're fit for purpose, they're safe, and also that they're actually representative of what the Red Arrows stand for, which is, as you know, is excellence. So he will come out over a number of days, make sure that we are adhering to those standards, and then fingers crossed at the end of it, he'll give us a thumbs up, he'll sign the piece of paper, and that is us then cleared to perform in front of the public.
Well, I'm wishing you all the very best for both the Reds and the Blues, and hopefully by the time this is shown on live on the Armchair Airshow, we can tell them it's been good news and that you are cleared to display. So very good luck, everybody. Let's go back to Chris. The press announced a couple of years ago that unfortunately the wonderful base of RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire is having to close, and that the Red Arrows are having to find a new home. What's the situation there?
Yeah, so the current plan is for us to move to Waddington. So we're looking to do that around about October time this year. So there's been a lot of pre-planning, as you can imagine, just to move a squadron in its entirety. It takes quite a lot of planning and effort. So current forecast is to move over to Waddington in around about October time. We'll set up there, and the plan is to try and offer the Reds to seamlessly transition across so that we don't input or impact anything to do with display flying, or even the future tour that's coming up later this year as well.
Very exciting. I'm sure we'll hear more about that later on throughout the summer. One last thing, Muskie, what can the crowds look forward to in terms of new display manoeuvres for 2022?
Mike, it's all the usual favourites are there. It's still a fast, dynamic, exciting show. All the favourites are in. There's some great displays, some great shows, but I'd watch out for the double goose. The double goose is making its return. It's a very exciting manoeuvre involving the front section and the rear section. So hopefully that'll wow the crowd and put down some colour smoke. And there's also a little bit of a special manoeuvre in there for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. I don't want to give away too much, but it's lots of smoke, lots of noise and lots of colour.
And from what I've seen on Twitter this week, the Infinity Break making a return?
Yep, that is true. Squadron Leader Tom Bold, Infinity Break. I think he really enjoys that particular manoeuvre because it's one of the only times he tends to have a bit more freedom to roll around the formation. But it's a great way to end the show, and it's a great manoeuvre, and it's really a spectacle with that red smoke against the sky.
Brilliant. Well, Squadron Leader Graham Muscat-Muskie and Squadron Leader Chris Phipps, thank you very much for coming on to support the Armchair Airshow and Aerobility. Please pass on our best to all of the Reds and all of the Blues, and wish you very best of luck for a safe and successful 2022 display season. Very grateful to the Red Arrows for coming on to support the Armchair Airshow, and I can tell you that they were successful this week on Wednesday in gaining their public display authority, and in fact in the last hour they've performed their first display of 2022 in Le Touquet in France. So big well done to the Red Arrows. I certainly look forward to seeing them next weekend at the Torbay Airshow. George.
Well, we're almost there. It's been an absolutely extraordinary day, had its ups and downs. It is a very challenging environment working here, but I think it has all gone amazingly, amazingly well. And we really hope you've had a super day. But just before we wrap, our team's just got one or two things to complete. There's one throw to be made, and would you believe it's Lingy's? Go on. Go on.
Here we go.
Let's
this
see.
is for the win, I think.
And can you see where he's placed on the board?
It is.
I don't believe it. Fix.
It's good.
Yeah.
Well done. Well, there you go.
Monopoly.
You can win that on the auction. And from Liz, a quick update on that.
Yeah, so we went to see Top Gun last night, and I have to say, Top Gun's flavour of the day for me. So Tom Cruise has finally made an appearance. It's made my afternoon. And certainly for the auction items, I'll be bidding on the Top Gun Maverick flight suit this evening whenever I get home. And as Lingy's just mentioned, we're going to sign the back of the Top Gun Monopoly board, and that's going to go live on the auction items as well after the show.
So keep bidding. Don't forget, we're not there yet. John, the latest from you. And how are we helping Aerobility?
Yeah, well, I have to say, as an Aerobility trustee, and I speak on behalf of my trustees, this type of event, fundraising for this charity that changes lives, is fundamental to our survival and to supplying life-changing experiences for disabled people. Let me give it to you in fives. £500 will provide 5 flight experiences for disabled people. £5,000 will run one of our aircraft from a maintenance perspective per year. £50,000 will pay for our fuel bill, and that's unfortunately going up only in one direction. So it's events like this that fundraise for our charity that is so important.
Well, there we are. You have it in a one-er. You can keep bidding, of course. You don't need to stop that, but we must take a break. It's been a very long day. It's been the most enjoyable day. There are just a few people behind me here who've helped out. There are way too many, but clearly our hosts, our primary hosts in this hangar,
the Biggin Hill Heritage Hangar itself. Peter Monk and his team looked after us so well, but Colin Hitchin and all the Biggin Hill, the London Biggin Hill Airport team as well, fantastic. Behind the scenes, you cannot imagine the view I've got with cameras and lights and screens and all sorts. Colin Parnell and his team, so many volunteers here today as well to make this happen. Our grateful thanks to all of you. And from all of us, we hope you've all had the most terrific day. All we can achieve now is to say, keep bidding, have a great time, support Aerobility, and here's to another year. Maybe we might just come back again. Goodbye, everybody.